Hello, everybody, and welcome along to my NFL draft show. And honestly, this is one of the reasons. Things like this is one of the reasons that I've created a YouTube channel. Um, I'm not gonna lie, because this is kind of what I'm obsessed with, and people look at me like I'm some sort of weirdo, and I'm like, what's he sitting doing there, taking all these statistics down for? Like, what is he doing? Um, I am really into like all kind of sports, and I'm also very into my football, especially. And in with football more than most, because there's a consistent um, okay, a consistent influx of players that come from one source, basically being the NCAA. Like in basketball, it's hard for me to analyze prospects because I can't really watch them in one spot. They're all kind of like some of them are in Europe now, and a lot of players aren't really going straight to college. They're playing in the G League. They're playing like they're kind of like all over the place, and therefore you really don't have an understanding of the prospects coming in. I mean, I'm not a basketball scout. Obviously, basketball scouts would have different, but in the NFL, um, I think it's the best covered draft, I think, of the current modern age. I live here in Australia. Most draft picks here come from like lower league, VFL, like Australian football, like other kind of like lower leagues. I never really get to really watch on TV. So I don't really know any of these kids. Again, it's like that's why I'm not a scout. I'm just a fan. But with the NFL, like I love the NFL draft. It's actually the most exciting thing, and I also like to be very keep a close eye as the summer develops into who I believe are the contenders. Um, and so I'm just going to give you a bit of a background before we swing into this. Um, I basically compile a list, and I basically kind of go through everybody's rosters. Go through statistics, PFF stats, and many people laugh and mock me for this. But I also look at Madden ratings because I think that's another way. Madden don't just make ratings out of nowhere. They track the progress of players. They go plus one, plus two, like in their ratings. And the same would work for FIFA, and the same would work for NBA 2K if you're doing that type of stuff. Like people mock it, but like if you have players of ratings of 90, players of ratings of 80, players ratings of 70, players ratings of 60, um, at the time they're generally going to be accurate based off what you've seen. Obviously, the hit and miss part about Madden, for instance, is that a player could be 70 something now, but by the end of the year they're an 80 something because you can't there's no quantifiable statistic for um, like a progression in a player or a player's work rate or desire or heart or things that scouts have missed out because like I look at a player like Puka Nakua, for instance. Like I don't even think he was on my radar. He was on my list of wide receivers from last year's draft, but he wasn't high on it. So that's where this kind of stuff can be inaccurate, but I could only deal with what I've got. So I basically, through a bunch of different metrics and different sources, I basically have got a ranking system of all the different players and all the different teams. When free agent came along, you kind of like copy paste, so you move it off of one team and move to the other, and the rankings kind of like fluctuate. And what it will do is eventually um, lead me to that final result. We kick off in September. Right before September, that's when I'll probably, in now that I've got this platform, will come out with a ranking system of who I believe are the best teams, like 1 through 16, in probably each conference, and I'll probably do as well predictions of record based off putting them head to heads using these metrics. Um, and I don't want to get too deep into this because I just want to do a mock draft at the moment. But I just want to kind of give you a background to how I evaluate these mock drafts and how I do them and how I make lists. So a lot of people, a lot of other NFL based content creators. They'll do their mock drafts, but they'll probably use it basing off. They probably don't have the time to compile the research. I know a lot of guys who are brilliant, and pick up to those guys who are actually very brilliant at really doing the scouting, and they do the tape work on each of these players individually, and they do and actually encourage people to think outside the box and maybe evaluate a player differently to how they're ranked, because at the end of the day, that's how NFL GMs do it. Um, they will obviously create a list of players, and they will take a look at them and put them under the microscope, and their metric might be different than Jadal Jeremiah or Mel Kiper, right? So there's so many different ways of doing it. My logic to do this is this, and I also have done a tremendous amount of scouting and tape work as well myself. So I also like to do the eye test, that way that when I look at a player, I kind of know the style and where he might fit in as well when I do these things. So it's not incredibly random as well. But what I like to do is take a look at the Daniel Jeremiahs, the Mel Kipers, the ESPN rankings, the PFF rankings. I do CBS rankings. Who else do I do? Like Sporting News. Who else? Yeah, basically, was it? Is that it? Like, basically, I go up about 8 or 9 different lists that are compiled. That they're called big boards, obviously, and all the different experts, all the different websites will make a big boards of how they rank all the players. And what's the beauty of scouting, obviously, because there's no real metric, and that's the beauty of the NFL. You're going to find that people that were first rounders were completely graded incorrectly in terms of when it translates to the NFL level, and you'll see guys that go under the radar who were completely overlooked who actually become your real NFL stars. Because you look at really the NFL and who's developed into stars, not a lot of them are first rounders. A lot of them are, well, they actually traditionally, a lot of them are third rounders. You know, look, a guy just retired like Travis Kelce was a 6th-rounder. Tom Brady was a 6th-rounder. Brock Purdy was the last pick of the draft. Like, it is, there is no way to properly grasp of who should be like the ranking, like, if that makes sense. But at this current moment of time where we're sitting, I want to kind of take the information that I've got, watch the tape that I can use, and kind of average it all out to create a list. So I don't, when I make these pool of players, when I draft these pool players in my mock draft, it's not from a PFF pool on a mock draft simulator or a Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. This is, I'll actually use those tools so I can create a board, like, that way I can track the players, so I don't have to write down every single time there's a drafting, like where I can go through things quickly. But I make my own board, and I evaluate the draft picks and who gets picked through on my own board. So the way I've worked this out, as I will go back to how I've gone through all the rosters, I've created a ranking of the 10 biggest. It's I wouldn't say weaknesses, because some teams are so strong where your 10th player on this list is actually an all-pro. So sometimes it's hard, and for those teams, like, I'll give you an example of some of those teams, like the San Francisco 49ers, for instance. They don't have many players on their roster that have big weaknesses. They have some specific areas in their team, which I'll highlight as I go through this mock draft. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, I would before, about a year ago, I'd have said teams like the Eagles, and I'd still, when you look at it, it's actually amazing how the Eagles have fallen apart. And by the way, I'm unlike the Premier League show that I did. I'm fully open about who I go for in the NFL. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, and I eventually, by the way, as I gain some steam, I will reveal, and I will reveal who my Premier League team is. Just as a side note, like, I'm not gonna be keep it a secret forever. I just kind of want to be able to attract fans of different fan bases, and the reason why I'm so willing to just tell you straight out, flat out, that I'm an Eagles fan is because when it comes to the NFL, I am fully 100%. Like, I see the data in front of me. I do a lot of meticulous research. I watch a lot of games. I actually probably watch every single game in the NFL the whole year. I've got my fantasy football team. So I'm always able to, at the NFL, regardless, like, I'm like, this player is the best, this player is not the best, like, this is players on this level. And I'm never going to be biased. Sometimes my bias will come out when, will look like bias when my players, my roster, the Eagles, like for instance, a year or 2 years ago, probably about very unbearable because the Eagles legitimately were the best team. Like, oh, get off of it, the Eagles, like, blah, 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 blah. You're so biased. But it's actually me looking at the data. Um, the Eagles, obviously, for me right now, are in a prove it mode after the way that their season ended. But I'm getting off of track. This is just the introduction. So to my NFL draft, and we'll start picking quite shortly. Um, but the thing here is that as I said, I've made a list of 10, and then I made a big board. And so what the way I'm going to do this when I'm going to pick in a way I believe many NFL GMs or good NFL GMs should pick is they do make a list of about 10 different needs, and maybe that becomes shorter. And I think it really depends on the amount of picks. The reason why I made it 10 is because obviously picks move around in the draft, so the amount of picks that one team might have at this point might be different from the amount of players that they actually draft. So I want to create a flexibility, a bigger list in case teams trade back, create more. They create, you know, more draft capital, and they take more players, or vice versa. I don't want to get stuck on just listing the needs of just the amount of picks they have left, because then it puts you in a bind in terms of being able to properly evaluate a team. And also kind of got to go look deeper into the list. It's also one thing I also say, and I've taken into account. I think it's a lot easier with the Eagles because they're my team, and I've got you know, invested in them. I do. There are positions where, like within the Eagles, which on this from a statistics basis or from a ratings basis, some of these players look good, but also some of them might be aging, and you just need to know that in the long term you have to bring players in. Like, I'll give you a great example with the Eagles. It's like Lane Johnson, right? Lane Johnson right now is the best right tackle in the NFL, but it's still a need for the Eagles because he's getting into his 30s. He's had some injuries. The injury, not injuries that have kept him out long term, because the guy's a warrior, but injuries that have piled up, like where eventually, just like Jason Kelsey, he'll pass on, and you want to have someone in his place. Like for instance, Jason Kelsey retires. Cam Jurgens has been there for 2 seasons now with the Eagles, and he's ready to step up in year 3 to become the starting center for the Eagles. So there are positions like that, and I've actually also in my 10. It's not just ratings. I've also looked at spots like that to create into that need list of 10 for all across the league. And then you also got to look at players who've left the team that were impactful that they now need to replace. So out of that list in 10, basically whoever the best is available, of players that list in 10 will be the draft pick in according to my rankings. But not necessarily always, because you also got to look at when is their next pick. Can they get a value of like if it's between 2 or 3 positions, which is the one that they need that they can get quality now that they can't get quality later on, right? Like you can, when you're deep in certain positions like corner or offensive tackle, or I mean this draft wide receiver, and QB to a certain extent, like although people are desperate to take QBs, and you know that you kind of, when you have the chance, if you need a QB, you got to take him, which is also taken into account here. So that's kind of a background into what I'm doing. I'm so excited to finally be able to share this with the world, and so yeah, let's kick off the mock draft and the analysis, and we're gonna also talk a little bit about each team that picks and why the pick that is being made will be made. So yeah, let's start. We're gonna start off here. The Chicago Bears are now on the clock, and I'm gonna kind of you'll see kind of the template that I'm gonna use with everyone as they go along. So we're gonna, without necessarily having to be too critical or talk about the strengths and weaknesses of teams or why we believe they're gonna be this or they're fourth in this division or third in that division. Like the NFL draft process for me is completely about analyzing people's rosters, positions of need, as I said before. Um, and for this one, obviously, I think most people who, if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in the NFL draft. And um, most people have, it's probably consensus as to who is this number one pick. So I probably shouldn't take that long. But I'm going to take a little bit extra here because I also don't want to take too long with each of these picks. But I'm taking a little bit of extra to kind of show you the system of how I go through. So for the Chicago Bears, um, actually, this is their 10 biggest weaknesses. Actually, sometimes I have added an 11th, so I star an 11th just in case it's close, and you know what I mean. The Bears only have 4 picks in this draft, so while they have a lot of needs, I reckon they got some more critical needs, which I think they got 5 or 6 critical needs, maybe even 7 critical needs um, on their roster. They only have 4 picks. But when we go up to the 11, all 11 are in play for these 4 picks. Now, a lot of times I will highlight that they only have 4 until you look at the top 4 needs. And in this case, due to the fact that they have traded Justin Fields, obviously the number one need actually by board, by rank, like in terms of them, is actually quarterback. So I will go, and I'm not going to take most time here because when you see that number one overall pick, when you see that, you know who he is, you know who the number one ranked player is in this year's draft. He's been that way the whole year. Like you see guys like Nick Wright, and I'm going to say the name after I announce the pick, but you see guys like Nick Wright, they've spoken about this guy for a good year or two, and he's actually put him on his quarterback mountain. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I think it's disrespectful towards the other quarterbacks in the league. And I think sometimes when you hype a college quarterback, you're setting them up for failure. I'm just going to say that for now. So this guy is probably should be the number one overall pick, but doesn't necessarily mean that he needs to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm just going to be very clear on that. That should not be an expectation. Like people think that Trevor Lawrence hasn't really lived up to the hype, and I disagree. I think the NFL is another level of ball, and if you have a player, or you have a need, and you have a player who is proven to be at least above average or top echelon player at quarterback position, especially because it is the most overhyped position because it's the most important position. But let's move on and let's make the selection here for the Chicago Bears because I believe we all know where they're taking. With the first pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback out of USC. So, I think everyone kind of knew this is where I was going with this pick, and I've just kind of spoken on him a little bit. But, yeah, look, the number one need here on the list for the Chicago Bears, as I just said, is quarterback. And it's the number one player of the draft. It kind of lines up. It's a slam dunk. This man has been, as I just mentioned, on Nick Wright's quarterback mountain prior to him being in the NFL, which I think is a slight other quarterbacks, and it's like a segment. It's hot taking. I understand kind of what that's about, the Fox Sports kind of culture there, but you look at Caleb Williams and talk about the prospect that he is. Obviously, everyone knew that he would be the top pick in this draft, and I think it's a lot of the reasons. If you look back to a year ago when they made the trade with the Carolina Panthers and how it backed out, they had the number one pick last year, which meant they would have the opportunity probably to take a Bryce Young, either that or taking Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter. But I think they kind of projected 1 year on. They kicked the can down the road. I think they knew where the Panthers would be, and therefore, I think they made the selection here of Caleb Williams here, and obviously they got DJ Moore. In that they acquired Keenan Allen. They also gonna have another pick later on this round. They only have 4 picks, and 2 of them are in the top 10. So you can see how important those 2 picks are. Um, so obviously Caleb Williams, the player comp that NFL.com has given him, and I think this is a bit more accurate compared to like what other guys have kind of crowned him to be um, before, and that is that I see him being like Kyler Murray, and I think Kyler Murray has unfortunately come under a lot of unfair criticism. I think recently, I just think he hasn't been healthy, but he is a great quarterback, and you can see the ability to make plays out of the pocket, his the arm strength, the vision. Um, Now, I think what's different between Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams, and I think what you're gonna may see is I actually do think that Caleb Williams at this age is a little bit more mature. He's also a little bit more committed to football. If we recall, Kyler Murray had the opportunity to play in Major League Baseball. He was a multi-sport athlete, and while Caleb Williams is more of a football player and has been committed to quarterback for a long time. And I think um, it's a slam dunk talent. And as I said, what you're looking for here, and I think we're at number one picks always kind of why people they disappoint people at times is because when people look at number one picks, they think, well, I'm going to be getting the guy who in the future is going to be the best quarterback in the NFL, and sometimes that has panned out. Like look at Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is a great example of a number one pick who have looked good, but then you look at Trevor Lawrence, who I actually think has been a very good NFL quarterback. I still would put him in the top half ranked of quarterbacks, maybe even in the top 10 of quarterbacks. Like he has been a very good NFL player. And when you're picking quarterback, it's different than you're picking some of the position players because, you're actually probably picking them ahead of their player ranking just due to the fact that they're a quarterback. In this case, similarly to Joe Burrow in his draft in 2020, Caleb Williams is the number one pick in the number one prospect as well as the number one quarterback. So I think it's a fit. It's gonna be interesting to see how Caleb Williams gets on in Chicago, but I think this is the obvious pick to make. You're not going to be picking any of the other quarterbacks ahead of Caleb Williams. That would be, I think, in my opinion, very catastrophic. And you'd be overthinking the pick. And sometimes you got to take the guy who is quite obviously by far and away the best player in the draft, and that's what the Bears will do here at number one. So now with Caleb Williams off the board, we move on to our second team that's up, and that is the Washington Commanders. Um, so for the Commanders, their list of needs go as far as this. So it's and I apologize in the Bears one. I should have listed their full list of needs. I should have done that. But here in the Commanders, I will do that. They also have 9 picks in this draft. So I have expanded their need list to 12, but it could also go up to about 9 or 10 in terms of legitimate needs that would they need to be addressed in the draft. Um, Number one need for them is quarterback. The second need is interior offensive line, so the guard position. They also need a tackle, so they do have needs on the offensive line, like big needs on the offensive line. Uh, they have need at corner. Obviously, they went in the first round at corner last year, but I still believe that they need a corner opposite from him. They have a need at wide receiver, like a third wide receiver, not a top, but like a slot wide receiver. Um, and I see need at defensive end is number 6. 7 is a need at center. 8 is defensive end or edge rusher. Ninth, and basically ninth and 10th as well are corners. So I feel like they need a 2 and a slot. Really, Washington in this draft. So obviously the number one choice here, and obviously sitting at number 2. They probably should be going at quarterback. Now, the number 2. Now, so in terms of so I think the one exception to my algorithm is quarterback especially when it comes to the first round because yes, wide receiver does come number 5 on their list, and I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. as the number 2 ranked player in this year's draft. Number one need though is quarterback, and they do have players that are ranked. Let's see, where am I? How am I for? So on my ranking, I have Drake May fourth overall best player, Jaden Daniels eighth overall best player. And I've kind of gone back and forth between these two players because I think after Caleb Williams, there is a discussion. And by the way, I don't buy into the JJ McCarthy hype. The tape that I watched does not show me. It shows me a national championship winning quarterback, but it doesn't show me necessarily a player with the height in terms of the potential and the skill to be great, like a difference maker at the NFL level, like Jaden Daniels and like Drake May have. So I kind of flip flop between these two, and originally I think I would have had Drake May here if I was just drafting based off ranking. And for a lot of these positions, I probably will do that, especially when they play similar positions. But quarterback, obviously, stylistically, it really depends on your OC, on your offensive philosophy, what kind of stuff you want to do. I think fit is so important when it comes to quarterback more than any other position. I do think fit is important as well when it comes to things like wide receiver, as well. Just because are you a big physical wideout? Are you a speed guy? Like what necessarily is your team looking for? But sometimes the best player on the board might not match up with that, which I think is dangerous because I still think regardless of what type of receiver you want, I think you still got to take the better one in the end because you could always change your scheme to fit the talent that you have. And so if you just get a better kid for the long term in the building, it doesn't really matter if he's not as fast as someone else. He might just have better hands. He might be more physical. But we're not talking about receiver at this point. So we are going quarterback. And so originally I will be quite frank. Originally on my mock draft, I did have it like when I did it by myself. I did have it a bit different, but um, once I really kind of looked into the schemes of this team and the team afterwards, I kind of flip flop them around in different orders. So I think we're ready to make the pick, and I'll announce what we have. With the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Jaden Daniels, quarterback, out of LSU. And originally I did have him going with Drake May, and I do, as I said, have Drake May as a higher prospect. But stylistically, I look at who's going to be the offensive coordinator here. I actually believe if they would have stuck with Eric Bieniemy, that Drake May could have very well been the pick here because I think Drake May has a tools. On my pro comparison to Drake May is a guy like is somewhere in between, like he got the physical tools of Josh Allen and kind of the passing range of a Justin Herbert. So, which by the way, that's a very high comparison. It does put, what I mean, it does put him on a high ledge. Um, but for Jaden Daniels, I think he's a lot more of the type of quarterback that Cliff Kingsbury typically has used. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury last year was the OC at USC, and he had the number one overall pick, Caleb Daniels, who've also compared to Kyler Murray. And by the way, there are hints of Patrick Mahomes and Caleb Williams, which I did touch on a little bit, but not necessarily in an official capacity from my evaluation. There is a Patrick Mahomes element to Caleb Williams, but I think I've gone with Jaden Daniels, and the pro comp I have here from Bleacher Report is of RG3. By the way, interestingly enough, also an ex-Washington quarterback. But so if you look at the kind of the pros and cons here of Jaden Daniels, and I'm going to go the list. So the positive, obviously, he's an elite athlete. So he's a lot more of the modern day type of QB, and I think he could have like a CJ Stroud sort of impact this year on Washington. I actually think that they've got a decent roster, and I think that Jaden Daniels legitimately would actually make Washington, if he could adjust obviously to the speed to the NFL, and obviously that's going to get better as he gets more mature and he's able to read defenses. NFL defenses a lot better and understand snap counts and rhythm a lot easier as he gets more experienced. But I think our OC like Cliff Kingsbury does need that sort of mobile, multi weapon. Like what's the word I use here? Dual threat quarterback. Um, and so Jaden Daniels very much is that. He obviously has come from the LSU QB school here, which also produced Joe Burrow. So he does have that great ability to read defense, and also he's got a really quick trigger on his throws, and he's able to get the ball out in time and make some really good, effective passes. Um, so he's got above average pocket toughness, and he's got above average process within the pocket. So he ties his feet to his eyes to remain in a throwing position late in the progression. But he's also, as I just mentioned, very good, like Joe Burrow, at being able to get the ball out quickly. So one of the reasons why Joe Burrow has been successful in the NFL, even without really a good offensive line, is because he's able to make quick reads and quick decisions, which Jaden Daniels, through the tape that I've watched with LSU, is able to do that too. Obviously, he's had some good weapons as well at LSU, which as well Joe Burrow did, and obviously, and I think it's something that in the past people have kind of overlooked because like, oh, I want to see what he's like individually, but I think when you get to the pros and you have great weapons and you know exactly necessarily where you know you can create good relationships with certain receivers. Like I think Terry McLaurin, a player who has kind of had a different quarterback under center almost his entire career, is going to love now having a franchise quarterback like Jaden Daniels, where he can make a further relationship, a more stable relationship. And I think T Mac will work really well. I think he'll have a good season actually with Jaden Daniels, a quarterback, if that is, however, the way they go. So he's got great ability to create. He's a dangerous runner. He can take off. You always have to be accountable. Like he is actually a really good runner, and actually he's got a lot of Jalen Hurts about him. I've got him on my screen right now. I like to watch the tape as I roll through these, but I'm watching some of these plays he's making, and there's a lot of Jalen Hurts sort of ability to run as well. And obviously he's a lot skinnier and he's not as strong physically, but that running ability, there's a bit of a Justin Fields element to his game as well. Um, but he's a good innovator, and obviously RG3, as I said, is the comp because of his ability to use his legs. But he's also got an absolute cannon of an arm. He's a great deep ball thrower. He's actually accurate in the deep ball, and he can drop it right into a bucket. So he's just kind of the prototypical modern day QB. This is what people are looking for nowadays to draft a QB, and it's kind of what I'm looking for nowadays. I know for some reason still there's the old school type that love themselves a passing pocket QB. I always kind of, when I look at the tape, and I always just kind of love a quarterback and give me more than just sit that back there in the pocket, because when you sit back in there in the pocket, especially let's say if you don't have a great O line, which Washington does not do, as I've underlined, their second and third biggest needs here are guard and tackle, right? And centers on there as well. So they have all the positions on the O line basically as a need. So a player like Jaden Daniels is probably going to suit them better than a player like Drake May. And yeah, but again, the downsides, and this was one of the downsides to me of Bryce Young a year ago, but in a different way. Bryce Young, I felt for me was a bit too short, and Jaden Daniels' downside is I think he's a bit too skinny. So as I just used Jalen Hurts as a comparison, the reason what makes Jalen Hurts great is in terms of his game to translate to the pro level is because he squats so much. He's got such a low center of gravity. He's such a strong man. He's got a really big build. Where Jaden Daniels, if he's going to be successful on the NFL level, is going to have to improve on that. But man, the ability is that of a very top level quarterback, and I think he'll be the best quarterback at Washington since Kirk Cousins. But I think as well, I prefer a game like Jaden Daniels to that of a Kirk Cousins, and they obviously had RG3 down there, and if it wasn't for his injury issues, I think RG3 would have been an excellent NFL quarterback, as he showed in his rookie career. So the other downside is that his ball does lack velocity, so he doesn't necessarily throw like bullets, which can lead himself to throwing some turnovers. I think in the NFL level, he likes to his balls kind of tend to hang out in the air. He does throw a nice tight spiral, but he throws a lot of float balls up there, especially on his deep ball. He likes to kind of like launch it up, and he's a lot more that type of quarterback than he is of a straight laser. Where I think about quarterbacks like Dak Prescott, who can throw straight lasers. Actually, Joe Burrow can throw straight lasers. Actually, you know what? Mahomes isn't really a straight laser guy, and I think I think that release of Jaden Daniels is a lot more similar to Mahomes. He's also got a great innovative ability. He doesn't just throw the traditional passes. I've seen him throw like scoop shovel passes forward on the run when he's in trouble. So he's a very creative player in that pocket. So anyway, there it is. Washington Commanders at number 2. Their selection is Jaden Daniels. So we move on to pick number 3. And obviously now off the board comes Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. And the New England Patriots are now up also with a need at number 1 of quarterback. So I'm going to run through their top 10 needs. Number 1 is QB. The second need I have listed for them is offensive tackle. The third need I have is offensive guard. Again, similarly to Washington, they got problems on their O-line. Defensive tackle is number 4. Another guard position, so both guard positions are within the top 5 positions. These are starting guard, by the way. I got outside linebacker, so in the New England Patriots system, outside linebacker is a pass rusher. Cornerback and wide receiver at 8. And ninth pick is sort of what I call is a flex position. I take the name flex from fantasy football because so for me, it's always that other weapon that used to be the fullback in the NFL, in the kind of an NFL 11 lineup, and there's still some teams that use fullback, but it's that 11th player. So it could either be a second running back, like an alternative running back. So you have your number 1 RB, and then you have your second number 2 RB. It could also be a slot wide receiver or even a 4th wide receiver. So sometimes you have 4 receivers out. That's what I mean by 11th guy. It could also be a second tight end in a 2-10 tight end set. So any of those, if they could pick running back, wide receiver, tight end at this 9th slot, that's their 9th need. The 10th need is defensive end, which in the New England Patriots system is more of a D tackle. So it's a second D tackle position. And I also have another wide receiver as sort of like their 11th. The Patriots have 8 selections. One here, 2. They have one here over here, and they have another one basically in the same spot in round 2. So obviously I think the pick here, we're going to just make it because there's no reason for me to explain why I've made this pick. I think you guys can expect what this pick will be, and I will elaborate. With the 3rd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina. So obviously Drake May is the higher-end quarterback between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And interestingly enough, he's going to go into a division with Josh Allen. There's a lot of pro comps with Josh Allen in terms of his physical ability, his ability to run and make plays, his cannon arm. I think a player like Josh Allen, who at the time was actually picked later on in the 1st round and probably should have been the number 1 overall pick. You remember Baker Mayfield, the number 1 pick. Players like Josh Allen, who were unicorns at the time, you didn't necessarily see what that would translate to in the NFL level. He's kind of a pioneer at that position in some ways because he's a quarterback who is excellent in the pocket, but also has just got great size, great strength. He's almost like a linebacker at quarterback. Now, Drake May is not as stacked as Josh Allen in terms of his physical ability, but in terms of the quarterback in this draft and what he could be in terms of how he works his body, Like Josh Allen at the age of Drake May had a similar build, and yeah, like I just saw a throw here on TV, which is like one that Josh Allen always makes, which means like he's very difficult to bring down, and he can make passes while while pass rusher basically has got his arms on him, and he releases the ball, and he always can make throws. Um, Now the strength on, and obviously I'll talk about the fit here with the Pats. Um, but his positive obviously is what I've just mentioned. He's got great athletic ability, great spot size, great speed. He's a great scrambler, design runner. So as I said, the Josh Allen comparisons, and I'd be so excited to watch Josh Allen and Drake May go head to head. The Patriots and the Bills already have quite a rivalry now, especially since Josh Allen has become the quarterback, and post Tom Brady. I think there was slightly a bit of an overlap between the two, but Josh Allen necessarily it wasn't at his elite best. I would have loved to see that, by the way. Speaking of Tom Brady, Bill Belichick is also out. So this is the very first year of the Patriots that post Bill Belichick era. So this is really a refresh, and obviously with the change of head coach as well should come a change of quarterback. And I think for the Patriots where they are right now, I'm just going to be blunt, and I know Patriots fans are very spoiled with all the champions they had. This is a great time for them now to kind of change the way they look on offense more specifically. And obviously, Jared Mayo being the new head coach is more of a defensive minded head coach, but so is Bill. Just to be honest, but to have a refresh, especially on offense, because I think the receivers that they had, their offensive game was very subpar. The way they played was almost very boring on offense, and I think now obviously they've shipped out Mac Jones to Jacksonville, and Jack Jones was meant to be the replacement for Tom Brady. I think more because of, and that was kind of the pick that Bill made at the time because of the similar attributes Mac had to Tom Brady. But I believe now with a new change of coach, you have a chance to kind of build a more modern looking NFL offense in New England, and Jaden Daniels would have been able to provide that as well. And I think they kind of at this point, sitting at number 3, have to take off the drop point, so they can't necessarily be picky here. And I kind of handed them this one in Drake May because I thought of the style of Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels to be a lot more suitable. Although Drake May, that being said, Drake May does have tools similar to a Cliff Kingsbury quarterback. I just think that he looks at Jaden Daniels and he just kind of sees the type of QB that he likes to use. But he could have actually worked in Washington, but he's sliding down a lot of people's boards. A lot of people put J.J. McCarthy ahead of him, which is just ridiculous, very just disingenuous. And I'll say the thing about Drake May, which was I said similar to Jalen Hurts, and there's also that element where he does have that big lower body strength, the upper body strength of a Jalen Hurts, and could be a big weapon in a QB sneak game. Maybe Washington have their own version of the Philly special. I've seen him run stuff like that in North Carolina. He's obviously got a cannon arm, as I highlighted, and he's got the kind of the passing range and ability and vision of a Justin Herbert. So Drake May's real potential in the NFL is very, very high, and you could almost argue. I know as hyped as it is with Caleb Williams, and I did see his number 1 prospect, you can argue there's a potential here, and I wouldn't be surprised if Drake May became a better quarterback overall than Caleb Williams. And I think being in a system like New England also can be really helpful for him to do that in that sort of environment with a well-run organization with a great owner. And what I mean by that is not necessarily by coaching, but just organization in general. Like, for instance, I don't think the Bears are a well-run organization, and I definitely don't think Washington's a well-run organization. The New England Patriots are the most well-run organization in football, and that's not debatable. They've had the most sustained success over the years, and Bob Kraft has chosen Gerard Mayo, and probably within his own reasons. You can't necessarily argue with the track record of Robert Kraft. You talk about Bill Parcells, you talk about Bill Belichick. Those are head coaches with longevity and great success, and you can't necessarily argue with that. So I think Drake May's ceiling, especially if he lands here in New England, is going to be great. And I'm going to be really excited to see Drake May go head to head with Josh Allen in the NFL. That should make for some great football. This is where the draft starts getting a lot more fun. Um, we've kind of got our big three quarterbacks out of the way. And where the Arizona Cardinals pick here at fourth, I'm going to actually be very. I should have outlined this at the start. This is not going to be a draft with trades in it. Um, for me, I don't have any inside knowledge of anything, and of it, while I could go through a mock draft simulator and make trades, um, I didn't necessarily just kind of want to do this for this exercise. Just pick what's who's next, and then kind of go through the needs and kind of stick and pick for where they are at. Um, so number four here come the Arizona Cardinals, and their quarterback obviously is a man mentioned plenty enough on this video, and that's Kyler Murray. There were many people last year who were saying, "Oh, the Cardinals," when they weren't doing really well, they're like, "Oh, well, now they can go and get Caleb Williams," and I'm like, "That's ridiculous!" Like, you have Kyler Murray, like he's been injured and stuff. I think he came on the second half of the year. He played very well under Jonathan Gannon, and I think this year he's going to he's going to come into have a whole summer to go through training camp and be fully healthy going into the season, and I fully expect peak Kyler Murray to return this year. So quarterback does not come up for me on the list of needs. So now we can go for a lot of the top prospects here that are non-quarterback, and you can really start using the rules that I've put in place in terms of the 10 needs and the best player available amongst those 10 needs. So the best player available at this point will be who gets picked. So it does kind of make the next 10 a little bit redundant, because I think the pick here has got to be this player. But I'll just quickly list off one defensive end. Now, for the Arizona Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon is a defensive head coach. Obviously, I know him well. He used to be the DC in Philly, so I know this type of defensive scheme that he runs, which is a hybrid scheme, which means that sometimes he'll play a 3-4 base, or sometimes he'll play a 4-3 base to give offensive different looks. He also plays zone, and he plays basically prevent kind of defense. Bend but don't break defense. So defensive ends and outside linebackers are both. So in certain times he'll use defensive. Like, for instance, you think the way the Eagles are built, you got defensive ends like Josh Sweat and like Brandon Graham, who are traditional hands in the dirt defensive ends, and you have pass rushers like Hassan Reddick, who are outside linebacker pass rushers. So in order for the John Gannon system to work, you need to have both of them. So I have defensive end here. That's a pass rusher. Guard, cornerback. So big need on cornerback. Like, their secondary is god awful. They have a lot of needs. Like, so that's why you kind of got to go with the best player on the board. Another defensive end, defensive tackle, wide receiver, center, defensive tackle, wide receiver, and then the flex position. So the number 2 player on my board, as mentioned earlier, is, and I will make the pick here for, so here we go. With the 4th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State. Now, why have I gone Marvin Harrison Jr. here? Why? Because he obviously, as I said, by the rules of the way I make picks, is that you make that list of 10, and who is the best available player amongst that list of 10. So if they didn't have wide receiver as a need, which it shows up twice on the Arizona Cardinals list, their number 1 receiver is a guy by the name of Michael Wilson, I believe, at this moment in time. They've just lost Marquise Brown as well as a weapon, so that offense they basically have no weapons, and what better way to change that by adding a guy, not just a guy who is elite, who's the best receiver in this draft, but he's also football heritage. So he comes from his father, Marvin Harrison, who interestingly enough, I believe he plays a lot like. I'm actually going to look up his pro comp here quickly, but for me, I'm Ohio State guy as well, by the way. So um, Marvin Harrison Jr. has grown up in the house of Marvin Harrison Sr. and has watched his dad play his entire career. And the way he plays is literally just like his dad. Um, Bleacher Report has given AJ Green as the comparison to, and I can see that in terms of prime AJ Green. But again, prime AJ Green, I would have given a pro comparison to Marvin Harrison. And so he's got good acceleration speed, always a threat to go vertical, great footwork and agility, excellent route runner, explosive ability, great hands, just just very smooth at the top of his route. He's a bit skinny, and for that, I disregard ever since necessarily Devontae Smith. And interestingly enough, his dad himself was also like when Devontae Smith was coming out. The pro comparison I gave also was to Marvin Harrison Jr., which was because of the excellent route running, his ability to make catches at the top, his great feet, great awareness, similar to that of Marvin Harrison Sr. And I actually think Marvin Harrison's a great pro comp. Another one, I always given AJ Green, another great pro comp more recently for me is Devontae Smith, who obviously Jonathan Gannon knows very well from his time in Philly. And therefore, I think Marvin Harrison is a great pick. He's going to have Kyler Murray as quarterback, and we'll see how. I'm only doing a first round pick, so I'll play spoilers here. I do also have them double dipping at wide receiver in my Fuller draft. I have them taking Lad McConkey in the second round. So just to increase those weapons around Kyler Murray, and I think Marvin Harrison has a great ability to, I think, be offensive rookie of the year. There's obviously going to be the three QBs I mentioned earlier, but there's more. There's again, quarterbacks necessarily are harder to translate to the pro game. Wide receivers, I think, a lot more are slam dunks. I think most first round wide receivers turn out to be great NFL wideouts, either great to good NFL wideouts. There's some exceptions, but I think Marvin Harrison is a slam dunk here, and he is the best non-quarterback in this draft. And Arizona have a number 4 overall pick, which is virtually a number 1 or number 2 overall pick by their ability to take the best skill position player. So number 4 overall is Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Arizona Cardinals. So the 5th pick belongs to Los Angeles Chargers, and so obviously the Chargers this year offensively have gone through a major overhaul. So Keenan Allen has now been traded now to Chicago Bears. Mike Williams was cut. He ended up in New York with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. So obviously there's a big change in head coach changing to Jim Harbaugh. So this is almost a fresh start here for Justin Herbert. I think. Well, I've been I've been critical of Justin Herbert, not because of his talent, just because it's actually mainly because of his talent. He is such a supremely talented quarterback. He is probably one of the 5. I would still rank him as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL with not top 5 productions in terms of victories. I just think he's up and down. The Chargers, for the most part, have been 500. With him starting just slightly above 500. They've made playoff appearances. They made all playoff appearance, in which they blew a massive lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And really, for a player of his talent, a quarterback of that talent, they need to start capitalizing on him. And I think the Chargers made a mistake in holding on to their head coach as long as they did. And now obviously Jim Harbaugh is in here. This is a real quality head coach he's got here. And now I believe that you're going to have to start building the weapons around him now with a clean house and a clean slate. I believe Gerald Everett uh, also Gerald Everett who was the tight end there. I believe he's also gone. Right? Has Everett also gone? Um, I should wish I could look at my phone here, but I'm using it as a camera. Um, but yeah, so I think now we're gonna take a look at the positions here. But the will so they need in their system outside linebacker. Again, I actually do not necessarily know the defensive the defensive formation that they're going to be using. Obviously, they've Jim Harbaugh brought his defensive coordinator DC over from Michigan, but how he plans to use the personnel with what he's got is going to be interesting because obviously got Joey Bosa, you got Khalil Mack in there, but I've put them as a hybrid for now. So I'm basically gonna I've expanded the amount of players on there, starting players from the defense by one, by having an extra D tackle in there, making the defensive ends traditional D ends, and the outside linebackers still being the traditional outside linebacker. So I've got an outside linebacker kind of where the Joey Bosa is, because I moved Joey Bosa onto the line for now, but this might also not be a need if they want to stick with the 3-4 need. But outside linebacker, I've got corner, I got guard, wide receiver is fourth now. Fifth is inside linebacker, sixth is tackle, seventh is D tackle, eighth is corner, ninth is receiver, 10th is guard, and the extra 11th pick, 11th need here I have is the flex position. So obviously they have needs all across the offense, as well as some needs on the defense as well. That sounds so obvious. They got 9 picks in this draft. Again, on this list is the number 3. The number 3 prospect I have is also plays receiver, and I believe he's an excellent fit here for Justin Herbert. So I've heard people analyze and trying to say, oh, they think they want to go with Rome Odunze, who, by the way, is a tremendous athlete. Just kind of to try to recreate a Keenan Allen sort of player in there, like a younger Keenan Allen. But I actually think that Keenan Allen is more of a short route guy versus a long big vertical, deep threat, which Mike Williams was as well. But Mike Williams wasn't really around health-wise a lot for Justin. Here we go. With the 5th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Malik Nabers, wide receiver out of LSU. So, I've just been watching a lot of highlights of Malik Nabers playing with Jaden Daniels. I was watching Jaden Daniels earlier while we were talking about the 2nd pick, and I'm watching him again, Malik Nabers more specifically here under Jaden Daniels. And what a great build of a wide receiver. Like, this guy is a guarantee. He looks like he's a beast of a man. The body, his ability to catch, his speed, his hands, his route runner. This is a full package A.J. Brown looking wide receiver. And I think this is a great fit for Justin Herbert. So now, because Justin Herbert inherited Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, right? Obviously, he took over from Phillip Rivers, and he kind of inherited his offensive weapons. Now he has the opportunity now under Jim Harbaugh with a brand new head coach to bait a Jim Harbaugh, ex-quarterback as well, offensive mind, a real chance to really have a different look on offense. And he can go, I think, with a younger player, a picked player, he's now gonna have for the long term, obviously, at least for 5 years. And Malik Nabers, I think, is suited more, to the skill sets of Justin Herbert, will allow Justin Herbert to use, if he stays healthy, to use his tools, which is his deep passing ability. And if they can get on the same page here, I think this is an excellent fit. He's the 3rd player on my board, so now he's coming off the board at number 5 due to, two spots below where he probably should be picked just because of the quarterbacks. If you really think about it, the number 4 guy went number 2, and the number 8 guy went number 2, and the number 4 guy went number 3, and the number 2 guy went number 4. So the number 3 guy on my board here goes number 5, and that's Malik Neighbors. The huge gaping hole here at wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers, and the best player available also is a wide receiver. So Malik Neighbors is the number 5 pick going to the LA Chargers. Now, and we're at pick number 6, and the New York Giants are now on the board. Now I'm going to kind of break the mold here. I don't necessarily have seen the way that I've picked here in a lot of drafts. So they have 6 picks. Their needs at the number is big need at D tackle, big need at center, another need on the edge still. So I know they've acquired Brian Burns, but I still have the need because I'm using New York with a new head coach again with a hybrid until we figure out basically the formation. So I've basically just kind of done both 4-3 and 3-4 as possibilities as well. Guard, they have a needed guard. Darren Waller has retired, so now once again they do have Bellinger, but I don't rate him that highly, and they have a need at tight end. They have a need at quarterback, again, need a corner, another need at the edge, a need at flex, need at cornerback, need at tackle, and need at safety. So I've kind of gone here in a different way, and a lot of people, there's some people, of course, who are all about people trading up to get quarterbacks, and I think many people who would have put maybe the Giants in that position, and maybe they might do so, but I kind of look at it a different way. I think, and because I'm not doing a second round on this video, I do have them taking Michael Penix in the second round. I think they can get the best player on the board at this point, and then being able to get Michael Penix, who is sliding down the board, and kind of steal him, because I actually do think a healthy Michael Penix here is a better quarterback than J.J. McCarthy. Although you saw J.J. McCarthy beat Michael Penix in the national championship, I do think that Michael Penix has been hampered with injuries, and he wasn't as great of a team. But I think he's actually a better prospect overall, but not in my ranking either, just given the fact that where everyone else is ranked the QB. So I'm going to be realistic here, and I'm not going to. But I have the Michael Penix going in the second round. So now I'm going to shock everyone with my selection, and I'll explain to you why I went this route for them. With the 6th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia. So you're like, Brock Bowers? A lot of people would have thought you would go Rome Odunze or something like that, especially considering that I've just said that they picked Michael Penix. You thought, oh, well, he's probably going to get creative here and say, let's put Michael Penix with Rome Odunze. Now, while Rome Odunze could be a great player if the Giants pick him, would be a very good pick for the Giants. I see Brock Bowers as the better prospect overall, and and Darren Waller has now retired, so they have a big hole basically at all their weapon positions. So I see Brock Bowers more of like a George Kittle or a Travis Kelce. And if you think about how the 49ers started building their offense, they started their offense with George Kittle first, before there was a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk or a Christian McCaffrey, right? There was they took George Kittle first. And for me, I think Brock Bowers is the better player here, and he is going to be a dominant force in the NFL. Like, think Travis, think about George Kittle, who is the comp here. He's been an absolute force, multiple-time national champion with the Georgia Bulldogs. Been their best offensive weapon for his entire college career, and he will. And if I put Michael Penix, right, you got a big safety blanket here Like we're not talking about like I honestly I thought Darren Waller was an interesting choice for them to go. I thought they would should have gone after a wide receiver last year, but this year, but then they went for a guy Darren Waller basically playing at the back end of his year with lots of injury issues. Here they're going to have a young Brock Bowers from the start. I think he's going to be another contender for offensive rookie of the year, and he can be a dominant force down the middle. They still have some really good. They still have some average wide receivers around, and they could obviously add to the wide receiving core later on in the draft. Um, but I just think they need weapons, and they obviously also have lost Saquon Barkley. Um, so they need I need an elite weapon, and I think that Brock Bowers is the better prospect than Roma Dunze. Not by much, but he still is a better prospect. So that's my thought. I think I'm the first person who has Brock Bowers going to the Giants. I don't think other people have really thought about this. I've seen him gone to the Jets, so the other also to New York, but to the Jets at number 10. I just think that his draft stock should be here, probably around six. I have him as the seventh best player, um, and I got him number going here, number 6 to the New York Giants. Brock Bowers. With the six, the sorry, we're up to pick number 7 of my mock draft. We're up to pick number 7, and the Tennessee Titans are up on the clock. And so let's just kind of, as we do with all of them, look at the board here, the needs. I've got edge rusher as a big need here. I've got him actually as both the first and second need for the Titans. I've got tackle as the third need, quarterback as the fourth need, but I'm going to kind of disregard it because they've obviously picked Will Levis last year. They picked Malik Willis the year before that. And I think the Titans have got to roll with Will Levis and give him a full year this year. See if they are. If I think about the Will Levis experiment this year, and I think about kind of what Washington did last year with Sam Howell. What they kind of like they did with Sam Howell, a little bit like what the Bears did with Justin Fields in terms of kicking the can down the road. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't. I feel like quarterback's not gonna get picked. They've done back-to-back drafts. They gotta see how the two quarterbacks that they have picked in recent draft, how they pan out. So I've got tackle again, guard, safety, tight end. That's in their top 8 because they have 8 picks. And after that, outside linebacker, in a 4-3 scheme, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, and the wide receiver. Um, so the best player available, and he was not taken in the last one just because he was not a need for the Giants or an immediate need for the Giants. But he's now here, my number 6 prospect, and he's an immediate need for the Titans. And I believe this player has gone on everyone's board, and so I'm just going to make the pick here. With the 7th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Joe Alt, tackle out of Notre Dame. Now, I'm not going to sit here for a long time and give you great analysis on an offensive tackle. Obviously, I'm an Eagles guy, and I love my O lineman, but it's harder for me to look at tape of O line because I'm not like a O line expert, if that makes sense. Um, like I know when they're great in the NFL, but so for me to look at tape of an O lineman is hard for me to do. So I basically just go through the consensus ranking, and the best tackle available here is Joe Alt. And obviously Tennessee have just got rid of Andre Dillard. They have probably one of the weakest O lines, and especially now with Derrick Henry not there, they can't necessarily cover it by leaning on the run game. I think it's going to be a year now where there are going to be a lot of growing pains for Will Levis, and They've acquired Tony Pollard, but he's not a bruiser like Derrick Henry. He's not the type of he's a type of running back who doesn't he's need to have some good offensive linemen to be effective, and therefore I think the Titans are gotta build this draft through the trenches. As I've mentioned, their biggest. You look at the top needs outside of QB, which I've basically xed out, is edge, edge, tackle, tackle, guard, right? So basically, their five biggest needs are all on in the trenches. So the best trenches player available on the offensive side of the board here is Joe Alt, and he goes number 7 to the Tennessee Titans. Now we move on, and sitting here at number 8 are the Atlanta Falcons, who sit at a very good place on the board, especially given how the board has fallen. Um, the first 7 picks have all been offensive players. Um, and the Falcons obviously have acquired Kirk Cousins. They've gone offense in the recent draft, and they built some pretty good skill positions. Think about Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bajan Robinson. So they've really built on the offensive side of the football in the recent drafts. And I think with the change of, I think Arthur Smith was holding the offense back. Just I was a Bijan guy in fantasy, and I just didn't understand what was going on. By the way, Tyler Algier, a very decent power back as well that can complement Bijan Robinson. Um, but obviously now they've had Kirk Cousins, and he's got a nice nucleus of young weapons around Kirk for the Atlanta Falcons to be decent on the offensive side of the football. I also kind of right there O line. It's low key good. Um, so most of the needs here for the Falcons are all on the defensive side of the ball here. So they're in a great position now to get the best defensive player in this year's draft. Their needs are at the edge rusher position, um, uh, also at the defensive tackle position, cornerback, guard, another corner, safety, inside linebacker, another pass rusher. Center is the only center and wide receiver. Got wide receiver is number 11, center at 9, inside linebacker at 10. So of the 11 positions I've got listed as positions of need for the Falcons, um, only two of them are offensive, none of them are defensive. So at number 8 here, the best defensive player that I have on the board here is coming right up here, and I will announce the pick. With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Dallas Turner, edge rusher, Alabama. So, Dallas Turner, I'm going to switch on his tape here in the background. You're not going to be able to see him, but I just want to be able to take a look at him. Dallas Turner. Um, I know my boy Ted Dan Cilio is a massive Dallas Turner fan. Um, I'm also going to take a look at the scouting report here of Dallas Turner. So, I actually like Bleacher Report's scouting report better than NFL.com's scouting report. I'm not going to lie. They give you kind of everything. So, he's 6'4, 247. So, nice build. He got an 83-inch wingspan, long 34-inch arms, 4.46 yard dash. Though, so they say that they have him as the positives. Great frame with room to put weight on. He's shown good athletic ability for the position. He has a few impressive finesse moves that can win in the NFL, namely a rip dip and a ghost rush. Pairs those with good bend to turn a tight corner. Solid as a bull rusher with good hand placement and leg drive, and enough strength to collapse the pocket against NFL offensive tackles who have a weaker base. Closes on the quarterback in a hurry. Now, can you imagine what it would have been like for SEC O lines to have to deal with Dallas Turner and Will Anderson last year or 2 years ago on the same defense? And so Will Anderson was I believe, was he the number one defensive player taken? Yes, he was. He was taken number 3 by Houston. So he was the number one defensive player on the board taken last year. His former teammate Dallas Turner is the number one taken this year. The pro comparison they have here is to Mandy Lawson. So yeah, the Atlanta Falcons go defense, and they will probably focus on defense as this draft goes on, and they're going to get just a ability to really get after the quarterback, an elite pass rusher, at least from SEC standards, going to Atlanta Falcons here at number 8. So coming up here now, we've reached the 9th pick, and we're Chicago Bears are back on the board, and so obviously we've gone over. We're actually have a chance now to actually fully go over all of the needs, which I didn't list the first time because I just went with Caleb straight up. So QB was a number one need, ticked off the board, so he's no longer here. So now number one becomes D tackle and defensive end. Those are a defensive end in a 4-3 scheme, which the Bears run, is an edge rusher, another DT. So basically the entire defensive, so DT, D end. Obviously they've got Sweat there now, so the other D end is not a need, but next to them, really they have got needs all over that D line next to Sweat. So they have an outside linebacker, which is the 5th position. Obviously, they've got Tremaine Edmonds, and they've got TJ Edwards there, but to have a third guy next to them is number 5, center. I've got wide receiver, guard, cornerback, and tackle. Right out, that's the top 10. Actually, 2 tackles, 9 and 10, because QB is now off the board. Now, they only have 4 picks here, and all of these are big positions of need. I think almost right up to about number 7 or number 8. I think they're all right at corner and at tackle. They did address that in last year's draft, so I did have them at the position, but those were picked. So I'll almost go on from 8 upwards here. I think just straight up here, I know it's going to be crazy, and I thought about going another direction, but he's still the best player available for them at this point. He's actually, and that is with the 9th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. Okay, so officially now I've made the pick of Rome Odunze. And man, can you imagine year 1, Caleb Williams with Rome Odunze as his 3rd best receiver? I think Keenan Allen in this Bears, if you put Rome Odunze, who's not necessarily a slot guy, he's more of an outside receiver, and you've also got DJ Moore. So you basically, I think actually Odunze is the biggest frame. Let me look at the comps here. Let me look at the comps here, but to Rome Odunze and the scouting report. Rome Odunze scouting report. Okay, here we go. So Rome Odunze is 6'3", 212. So he is a big target. He's a jump ball receiver, as you've seen, used with Michael Penix at quarterback. I love watching these highlights here. With Penix at QB, actually, I love Michael Penix as a QB. Like, legit, I'm an Eagles fan, and I've given Michael Penix to the Giants. That would kill me. But I got to be fair, and that's the point of my channel. That's the point of this activity. So the scouting report here on Rome Odunze: great size and strength for the position, sturdy and rocked up build. Good fluidity and change of direction, and an easy mover. Oh, absolutely jumps off the page. Above average route running, polished player, uses length and strength to effectively to separations. Great ball skills and catch radius. Very consistent ball tracking, excels in contested catch situations, flashes of physical yak ability, strong player with a good feel for space. The negatives: average long speed, average explosiveness, doesn't really pop at the top of the routes when he has the ball. That is why, for instance, for the New York Giants, I went with Brock Bowers instead, because I feel like if you empty out that entire skill, like they have almost of blank a blank canvas of skill players. Therefore, they need a guy like Brock Bowers more to lean on. Where I believe the Bears now with Keenan Allen and with DJ Moore at wide receiver, and their young rookie quarterback is going to have, and DeAndre Swift, by the way, at running back. Like Caleb Williams should be set up for a really good rookie campaign. A lot better than, like, for instance, I just gotta give the credit here to Ryan Poles. He says, like, as I said in when I was talking about Caleb Williams, kicking the can down the road, not just kicking the can down the road, being able to acquire DJ Moore, right? Being able to see what Justin Fields could look like with DJ Moore to understand like whether or not they wanted to go QB the next year. Being able to trade Justin Fields and get some draft picks for Justin Fields, so able to move him on, and now being able to take the best quarterback available in the NFL draft for a very long time. The pro comparison here is Devontae Adams, and that is scary. And watching this tape, there is a lot of Devontae Adams here. Devontae Adams isn't a first round pick, so we're talking about what we've seen Devontae Adams in the NFL. And if you really think of fantasy team, you can have Devontae Adams and um, and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. Like that is insane. So you're gonna have a young Devontae Adams here and Roma Dunze, um, going to Chicago here at number 9. That is absolutely scary. Um, yeah. So um, that basically does it. The Bears. This is their second pick, so they've only got 4 picks, but for them to come out of this draft with Caleb Williams and then be able to also pick another weapon. So the long term weapon. See, the thing is Keenan Allen is a more veteran player, and DJ Moore is not a veteran player. I remember him being drafted not long ago. He's obviously a second contract player at this point. But now you got a Roma Dunze here who can learn from those players and become the franchise receiver, like similar to what the Eagles have done with Devontae Smith, pairing him with AJ Brown. Devontae Smith is still the franchise wide receiver. He's still the long term investment. And man, the Chicago Bears offensively will be going from one of the most toughest offenses to watch, like eyeball scratchers. And also, don't forget they also have Cole Kmet, their second round pick from not long ago. Top tight end, really. I think he can look great as well with all the weapons around him. So I think they're going to go from being a team that has looked really bad on offense, all of a sudden overnight, to probably being one of the elite offensive units. They're gonna be very exciting to watch. If the draft pans out the way that I've projected it, it should be a lot of fun. So pick number 9, the Chicago Bears do select Roma Dunze. So now on the clock come the New York Jets, and I believe that this draft has probably not fallen the way that Aaron Rodgers in particular would have liked. A lot of the big offense, it went offense, 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 offense. Um, and I think they would have liked to have a player like Brock Bowers. A lot of people have put Brock Bowers here. Aaron Rodgers, thank God he doesn't know me, but he'd probably be upset looking at my mock draft and be like, God damn it. I feel like a lot of people's mock draft have kind of looked at the Jets and been like, that's the team that's probably most tight end needy. I actually disagree, because Darren Waller is now retired, which isn't being spoken enough about, which leaves a big hole for the Giants. But the Jets are now left here, I think, with all the main offensive weapons on the board, because I did have the flex as the number 1 need here for the Jets, but they did acquire Mike Williams, and like they have like some good pieces there, like Brees Hall, um, uh, My guy, the Ohio State guy. Come on. Garrett Wilson. Sorry. So and now Mike Williams. So you would have said, oh well, look, if you can put a nice tight end there. No, I think Tyler Conklin's a solid tight end. But now, obviously, the tight end position, and they can't necessarily lead on another wide receiver. I think they've also. This is a team that is look. One thing I can tell about the Jets is they got a very good defense, and also they've just now added my man Hassan Reddick to that defense. So it does allow them to be very flexible with what they do on offense. Now that the weapons are taken off, now I will quickly list the needs just to continue the process. I had that flex position number 1. I had offensive guard number 2. I had defensive tackle number 3, safety number 4, center number 5, defensive end number 6, wide receiver 7, tight end 8, safety 9, cornerback 10. So that's what I mean. Tyler Conklin is a lot lower down the list. He'd still be serviceable, especially with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback. He didn't really get to have that last year. He'll be a good, solid tight end this year. I wouldn't go Brock Bowers. I mean, he's off the board. I probably could have gone that direction if he was still there, but he's not. So I think they're going to go, and I'm going to take the pick here. With the 10th pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Troy Fautanu, offensive tackle out of Washington. Now, you could say, why would you pick an offensive tackle? That wasn't on the list of the people that you just listed, the positions you just listed. Troy Fautanu has got the ability to play tackle and guard. So guard, you probably don't have even a first or second round quality guard in this draft. So for anybody who actually does have a need in the interior, Troy Fautanu is going to be a very popular commodity in this draft. And I think this is probably the highest he could be, which is a top 10 pick. And that's basically because of the need. Like, after Troy Fautanu, you're not going to be able to... You're basically, if you have a need at guard, unless you want to convert a more true tackle to guard, you're not going to be picking until the third round. You're going to overlook the guard position. So the Jets now have guard outside of that flex position, which shouldn't be prioritized over your O-line. So essentially, they have guard interior O-line as their number 1 priority, and the 15th ranked player I have on my board fits in with them, and that's Troy Fautanu. So they're going to beef up that O-line for Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully, it means he can stay on the field a lot longer than 5 minutes this season for them. That is the number 10 overall pick. So that rounds out the top 10 here with Troy Fautanu going to the Jets. Back-to-back Washington players here in this draft. 11 now, and the Minnesota Vikings are now on the board. Obviously, Minnesota most notably have lost Kirk Cousins. He's now found a new home in Atlanta. Their needs here are as follows. They actually have guard as a big need at the top. A third wide receiver. So, obviously, they got their first 2 receivers. Obviously, are very good, especially most notably Jefferson and Addison. D tackle, actually 3 and 4. QB is their 5th need. Another guard need at 6, 7 at corner, 8 at corner, 9 at flex, 10 at center, and the 11th need is inside linebacker. The Vikings have got 9 picks in this year's draft. 2 of them in the first round. Just like their division rivals, the Bears, they do have 2 first-round picks, just obviously not as good as the Bears' 2 first-round picks, because they pick here at number 11, and they pick at... let me look down at the board here. They will be picking again at number 23. So, without further ado... We'll now go and announce the pick. With the 11th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. So the national championship winning QB who's been flying up people's mock drafts as of late. I actually have him falling down here to number 11. Now, the reason I couldn't have taken him in the top 10, he could have gone to in the Giants slot, which is what obviously a lot of people are banking on. A lot of people also are banking on him actually going to Minnesota, but going it in a trade up. I think they're better players. Now, J.J. McCarthy on my big board is... He is the 21st best player on the board. So he's actually going 10 spots ahead of where I have him projected. So let's take now we're back here talking about quarterbacks again. So let's take a look at the scouting report here of J.J. McCarthy. He's 6'3", 219, so he does have good size. He's got above average quickness and agility, nimble mover in and out of the pocket, flashes ability to create from outside the pocket, above average accuracy when throwing in the middle of the field, such as slants, glance routes, and digs. Above average toughness in the pocket, willing to take hits to get the ball out. Negative. He's a one-speed thrower with average arm talent. That's what I'm talking about. That's why he's only 21 for me. He's not an elite arm talent like the other three. Often fails to add arc and touch when necessary, especially outside the numbers. Below average ability to throw late in the down or from uncomfortable platforms. Below average processing and timing on anything but his first read. So that's what I'm saying. People who want to trade out for this player, he obviously won a national title. He won it with Jim Harbaugh. He's obviously been full of praise for the player. And by the way, the pro comp is Baker Mayfield. So, once again, this is a chance, I think, for the NFL to rewrite itself in terms of how they look at QBs, which is why I hate when I see people going with J.J. McCarthy in the top 3 ahead of a guy like Drake May, or some people even ahead of Jaden Daniels. I think a lot of people use this J.J. McCarthy as a spokescreen for the quarterback that they actually want. And I don't want to shit on J.J. McCarthy. I'm just saying that he shouldn't be flying up the boards the way he is. He's a Baker Mayfield. So you have a chance to rewrite the history books where the number 1 overall pick was Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen went later on in the first round. In fact, Lamar Jackson went the last pick of the first round in that year. And so you have a chance to kind of rewrite it where Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen go earlier in this draft. And by that, I mean Drake May as Josh Allen, and it's not a comparison, but Jaden Daniels as Lamar Jackson, right? And look how those players have developed and how Baker Mayfield has developed, and the fact that Baker Mayfield was taken ahead of those guys. The comp here of Baker Mayfield and J.J. McCarthy shows to me that's kind of the reason why I'm not a big fan of his, is stop getting trapped with that. If the Vikings trade assets, obviously they're desperate to get a QB, but again, as I said, they could take Bo Nix, they could take Michael Penix. Those quarterbacks for me, I'm happy to take if they fall to me, you know what I mean? Because I'm not trading away assets. I can always reset without Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was always a bridge quarterback, which they paid a lot of money to, but he was never the long-term guy. And so they do have a chance now here to roll the dice with J.J. McCarthy on my board. And without giving up assets, without trading up for him, he just falls for them here at number 11. And he's going to have some good weapons going there in Minnesota. Of course, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and yeah, that's going to be the replacement for Kirk Cousins here. It's a quarterback. J.J. McCarthy goes here at number 11 to the Minnesota Vikings. Moving on now to the 12th pick, and on the clock here are the Denver Broncos. And The Denver Broncos are obviously now let go of Russell Wilson, probably the worst contract in NFL history. Finally, they had to pay a lot of money to get him off the books. They're basically going to be paying for him to be playing in Pittsburgh um, in the upcoming season, but that leaves for them a big hole at quarterback. And I'm going to run through the needs here for the Denver Broncos. Quarterback is the number one hole, big time, like the huge difference between number one and number two. Then they've got center as the second need, D tackle as the third need, corner next to Patrick Surtain. I'll be on Patrick Surtain. Their other corners now on the left on the remaining on the roster are not very good. Another two corners actually, back to back corners, tight end, defensive end, safety, guard, outside linebacker, flex, defensive end. So here I'm going to do something that completely breaks the rules of my draft, and it's kind of just basically because I believe this will probably be the pick, and knowing Sean Payton, um, he's not going to risk this player getting taken, and I'm going to make the pick now before I delve further in, and so here is the pick. With the 12th pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Bo Nix, quarterback out of Oregon. Now, I actually have, and I've been doing the scouting work on Bo, a second round grade on Bo Nix. I have him as listed as the 34th best prospect. So that's an early second rounder. Now, the pro comp to Bo Nix is Andy Dalton. He's also 25 years old. So you're talking about a guy already, you're going to pick him in his first year, and he's 25 years old. A little bit similar to Joe Burrow, who in terms of he was a late bloomer in college football. Obviously, he sat behind Justin Herbert for a long time at Oregon, but he is a late bloomer here, and so you're kind of getting a guy already in his rookie year. By the time the crazy thing is with Bo Nix is by the time his rookie contract is up, let's say he makes all the way, he picks up the 5th-year option, he's 30 years old, like, which is crazy, right? So the positives here is a good athlete, explosive short area movement, shows good speed in the open field. Good creation ability outside the pocket, willing to break the structure, plays with eyes downfield, functional accuracy, shows the ability to layer throws, consistent, reliable, quick game operator, ball comes out quickly and accurate, which, you know what, he's going to be a useful starter, I think, in NFL, but I think the Broncos have such a hole here. They cannot go into next year. Sean Payton cannot go into next year with, look at Troy Franklin, that guy is so good. I'm looking at him we'll get to him later. But yeah, so he sort of has to reach here. Second round talent here at picks 12, and the meaning behind this, like for instance, I've got the Giants, and then later on another team, basically passing out on the ability to reach because they know that they can get the quarterbacks that they want later. And another man I haven't mentioned you here is Spencer Rattler. So here you got a little bit of the second run on quarterbacks here in this draft. And it's kind of like the level below. So you have the elite three. But I say elite by the terms of this draft, not by the terms of the NFL. And you still have like the second tier here, and the comps of Baker Mayfield and Andy Dalton, right, kind of tell you where they are. And when we talk about Andy Dalton, we're talking about Andy Dalton now. We're talking about Andy Dalton during his time with Cincinnati. He was a serviceable starter for a long time and a very good NFL backup if needed. And just sort of kind of that role, that Drew Brees sort of role. He is not Drew Brees, but he's going to have to play that sort of role here. Suits Sean Payton's system way more than a player like Russell Wilson. Sean Payton likes to have a pocket QB, and he wasn't necessarily able to use Russell Wilson's tools properly in Denver a year ago. not that Nate Hackett did either, but I think he's a more of a he's a fit for the system. So they do reach at here at QB just because I think QB is the biggest need they have, and they are picking for need rather than best player available here, but they don't pick for a while, and they don't pick. I don't believe they even have a pick until the third round, so they're not even going to be able to go and take Bo Nix in the second round. They're going to have to take him here, reach for him just because they know that they need to get their quarterback, and I just kind of feel like they just had to do it. So Bo Nix going to be playing in Denver in the AFC West. Here to pick 13, and the Las Vegas Raiders are on the board, and obviously they would have been hoping. I think not really. Actually, this was the team that I did say would. By the way, spoiler alert: I have no more quarterbacks left being picked in this first round. There are many people who do have Michael Penix going in this place as a reach, but I actually believe that for the Raiders, they've got other needs. I think if they were smart, they have got Gardner Minshew now this year, and he proved last year, but when he was in Jacksonville, and not really that much with us, but that he could be a serviceable starter, and that the Raiders can kick the can down the road, and maybe they pick a quarterback when they're in a better position to do so. I think they guys kind of keep building on the roster. So, quarterback comes up here for me on the fifth need of the Las Vegas Raiders. Number one being guard, but as I said, Fatana would have been a good pick here if he would be a good pick here if he falls to them. I got linebacker, tackle, corner, as I mentioned, QB, guard, wide receiver, defensive end, running back, corner, inside linebacker, tight end. And so the pick is in, and I will tell you my pick for the Las Vegas Raiders. With the 13th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Talise Fuaga, tackle, Oregon State. So, number 3 on their board of needs was tackle, and the best player available at this point at 13, the 10th best player on my list is Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. They get to strengthen the O-line and kind of build the trenches here, because I actually do think a rookie quarterback necessarily isn't necessarily. I mean, I know he has a guy like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers in Vegas and stuff, but I don't know if a rookie quarterback is necessarily the off O-line is ready for a rookie QB, because if you've seen, I've got guard, tackle, 2 guards and a tackle, both coming up here in their top 5 to 6 needs here for the Raiders. So I think they kind of need to set the infrastructure, set that O-line, play at least a year. They're here with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, and kind of just build that roster up. And Talise Fuaga is the best player available on the board. He's strengthened their O-line, and actually I'll do a bit of a spoiler here. I do have them taking Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round. I actually have them passing on Michael Penix and taking Troy Franklin, who I was just mentioning on my last video watching Bo Nix highlights, in the 2nd round. But Talise Fuaga is the best player available here, and that's who goes at number 13 to the Las Vegas Raiders. 14, the New Orleans Saints are now on the clock. Now, I think just so this video isn't too long, as these picks get later on, I'm actually going to be a bit quicker and do less of an analysis on all these picks, just so we can just kind of move along this video along. So I do have the New Orleans Saints here. Their needs are guard, tackle, D tackle, guard, safety, D tackle, corner, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, outside linebacker. The best player available for me, and let's make the pick now quickly for the New Orleans Saints. With the 14th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Ole Fashanu, tackle out of Penn State. And the reason why I've gone with Fashanu here is number two is the tackle position is their guard and tackle are their top two needs. They did obviously take Trevor Penning in the first round last year. I don't necessarily know if he really impressed in that first round, but they could also, if Trevor Penning develops better, put him where Andreas Pete is right now on their O line to the other side necessarily, but kind of got the two of them to compete in camp, and one of them will be stashed away, I believe, until or compete with Pete. Like Penning is a swing tackle; he can play either side. Fashanu could play either side, right or left tackle. So just building on that O line, which I think is a bit of a weakness now. Like obviously you've got, as I've mentioned, three of their four biggest needs are on the O line. And guard obviously is not available, so the tackle is the obvious choice here. And Fashanu goes number 14 to the New Orleans Saints. 18 now, and the Indianapolis Colts are on the board. Their needs are outside linebacker, corner, safety, flex, tight end, safety, cornerback, guard, wide receiver, defensive end, and outside linebacker. And the best player available is now the second need for the Indianapolis Colts. And I will announce the pick. With the 15th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts selects Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. So the top cornerback in my draft, on my board, comes off here and going to the Indianapolis Colts, who have a big void here at corner. And yeah, Isaiah Rodgers going to be playing in Philly. But they do have a big need here, and man, I'm a huge fan of this kid, Quinyon Mitchell. Now, traditionally, I think the top cornerbacks are at bigger schools. If you think about, Cincinnati as well is where Sauce Gardner came from, and he wasn't necessarily going into, at least for me, the top prospect at corner in that draft. For me, it was Derek Stingley. But for a kid coming out of Toledo, you wouldn't expect. But man, this kid, his measurables, his skills are off the charts. The guy just makes plays. He's a great tackler at the corner position. He's a lockdown corner. He's ball hawk. He's good against the run. Like, this guy is a full package playmaker at the corner position. And Indianapolis get the best corner in this year's draft. And I think he's going to potentially be just an outstanding player for them for a very, very long time, and could potentially be in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year this year. Just an absolute playmaker. Like, if he racks up, he's always around the football, this kid. If he can rack up some turnovers, make impacts. I kind of felt Devin Witherspoon was very similar player to him last year, and until he got injured, I felt Devin Witherspoon would have been in the position to be a defensive Rookie of the Year. So if Quinyon Mitchell can stay healthy, you see him, he can sack the quarterback, he can come off the edge. This guy is just an everything cornerback. He can do everything, man, and that's why I have him as the number one corner in this year's draft. So, yeah, Quinyon Mitchell to Indianapolis. So we're up at pick 16, which takes us to halfway through this mock draft, and the Seattle Seahawks have the next pick. They're on the board here at 16. Their needs are, as I said, guard, which again won't really get quality guard play until the third round. Center, pass rusher, guard, corner, tight end, flex, and then that's in their top 7. They have 7 picks in this year's draft. beyond that, defensive tackle, inside linebacker. Obviously, Bobby Wagner has now left. D tackle, outside linebacker, and tackle. And the pick is in now for the. The pick is in for the Seattle Seahawks. With the 16th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Jared Verse, edge out of Florida State. And the Florida State Seminoles project, I'm just going to be honest, what a beast of a pass rusher. I'm watching him here on the tape. You see him just beating up on Jaden Daniels, who obviously is the number 2 pick in there in this draft. He just comes around the edge. He makes plays, man. Just an explosive edge rusher. Pure talent. Physical monster. And honestly, this is a player actually who, as an Eagles fan, I would love to see Howie Roseman potentially trade up maybe to a spot like this or ahead of this. Obviously, Eagles are sitting six picks afterwards at 22. But I like to see him maybe package the pick for Hassan Reddick with this pick and move up to somewhere around here or maybe earlier. Like a team like the Raiders, for instance, I reckon could trade down, or the Broncos could trade down because the Broncos could still pick Bo Nix later on. If they wanted to, I don't see anybody else really taking him, bar the Raiders. But I still think the Raiders might opt to go Gardner. I think Gardner Minshew is going to be a better player this year than Bo Nix. But Jared Verse, just an absolute monster, beast of a pass rusher. After Dallas Turner, this is the look. Dallas Turner, for me, I know is a top 10 prospect, so I haven't even really thought about him as a possibility. But I think that Jared Verse is someone who's in that range. Obviously, I have him going here at number 16. But yeah, the Seattle Seahawks. What is he going to bring to the Seattle Seahawks? He's obviously going to bring the monster ability off the edge, which they need, which is really going to add like a real weapon, a real guy that pulls trouble offensive lines. His pro comp was Ryan Kerrigan. When you think about him as a Ryan Kerrigan, at the peak of his powers with the Washington Redskins at the point, with Washington, we'll call him, he was an elite pass rusher. And Jared Verse, I think, is going to become an elite pass rusher in this league. I'm just going to be honest, if the Eagles can get their hands on him, I would feel like long term I would understand why they did get rid of Hassan Reddick, because this guy potentially has a bigger potential to be a elite pass rusher in the NFL. When you think of some of the big guys like the Boses of this world, like Garrett, like J.J. Watt, I see that type of potential here. And you still think about Ryan Kerrigan as a comp, that he at his peak was one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And this guy absolutely makes plays all over the field, man. He hurries quarterbacks into bad throws. If he's not sacking the quarterback, he's pressuring them and he's making them hurry, and he's getting late licks on the quarterbacks. And man, this guy, yeah, he's gonna be a talent. So he comes off the board here at 16. Where the Seattle Seahawks come and get their man, that is Jared Verse. Okay, so we're up to pick 17 here now, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. And they have 8 picks in this year's draft. And I have their number 1 priority being corner, second priority being defensive end, which in the Jaguars system is a DT, which is a guard is 3, 4 is tackle, flex is 5th, 6 is corner, 7th is DT. 8 is QB, but disregard it. Look, Trevor has got to do better, but they're not going past Trevor. Safety and outside linebacker. And the best player on the board, once again, lines up with the number one need. And the pick here is upcoming. With the 17th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. So the second best corner comes off the board, and next to Mitchell. Now this is more your typical top corner because he played in the SEC for Alabama. And so I'm just going to just quickly turn on the tape here just so I can watch him. Quick scouting report. What's the scouting report? Terrion Arnold. All right. So what they say here about him is smooth athlete with fluid hips and movement skill, has the twitch and explosiveness to drive out breaks, able to quickly sink his hips with great reactionary quickness, and looks to run routes for receivers. Great top end speed, easily able to run with receivers downfield with very good recovery speed, few receivers able to get behind him. A high IQ player with the awareness and instincts to play in the run game, makes quick decisions and triggers downhill to the run, quick to defeat blocks in space, and shows to be a secure tackler in tight space. His negatives are his inconsistent tackler, especially in space, stops his feet and dive at the ball carrier at times, plays high at times, especially in off coverage, tends to hop into breaks, leading to slower change of direction, ultimately allowing too much separation and easy receptions. But man, I'm just looking at some of his highlights here in college, man, and look, this is a guy who could step in and be a starter here in the NFL in his first season. Another guy I would be chomping at the bit here for Howie to maybe get for. Now we're starting to get in sort of the range of the players, given that our big needs are on defense. The type of players that I would think would change the game on the defensive side of the ball, and this is kind of like the meat and bones in terms of if you're picking on defense part of the draft, because I feel like you're really you're getting the corners coming off the board. Quinyon Mitchell, well before Jared Verse just went, so we're getting a nice run here on defensive players. Like we had Dallas Turner going, and then we went back to some more offense. Now we're going to get into the meat and bones of the defensive players. Terrion Arnold has also shown an ability as a returner. So I'm seeing here a specific kick return he's had against South Florida, where he's taken it to the house. So like, just a really great athlete all around, able to do. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think he steps in and he's the number one guy here in Jacksonville. They've obviously lost a lot in their secondary, and Terrion Arnold to the Jacksonville Jaguars with Doug Peterson should be a match made in heaven, I think, almost. I think he's the perfect fit here, there in Jacksonville. Kind of reminds me of Jalen Ramsey. What's the pro comp? Trevon Diggs. So off another cornerback from Alabama who is a playmaker, is able to jump routes, able to make turnovers. As I said, he's got great awareness, but he is a ball hawk, and he is able to create turnovers. So if he's anything like Trevon, look at this. That was opportunistic. He literally just took the ball in the air, punched it out for someone else to get to it. That's really high awareness at the defensive back position. But yeah, he makes turnovers. He's always around the ball. It's great attributes to have as a corner. Obviously, these corners from this year, It's deeper at corner, but it's also not as top ended at corner in this year's draft. Um, Quinion Mitchell is my top rated at number 12. Terry Arnold, he is the 13th best player. So it is kind of neck and neck here between these two. A lot of people might actually prefer Terry Arnold because of the fact that he's been tested playing in the SEC. Nick Saban player. In fact, he's the one of the last breed of Nick Saban players. So yeah, Terry Arnold, the ball hawk from Alabama, going to the Jags here at number 17. Bengals here are now at the board at 18. And the needs that they have are first and foremost defensive tackle. With Tyler Boyd gone, a third wide receiver, and potentially Higgins could be on the move, maybe during the draft. You never know. They got a need now at running back with Joe Mixon out of town. Need still at guard in the interior of the O-line. At linebacker, at corner, at edge, another guard, defensive tackle, tight end, and the flex. I think I'm just going to get straight to making the pick because they line up quite nicely here, and here you go. With the 18th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Byron Murphy II, the defensive tackle out of Texas. So, man, what are the Cincinnati Bengals getting here at pick 18? They're actually getting this is exactly where he should be in terms of his ranking. He's actually the 18th player on my board and the best defensive D tackle in this year's draft. Now, the D tackle class is nowhere near as strong as last year. Obviously, Jalen Carter was a once-in-a-lifetime prospect. Sorry, Eagles got him. But Byron Murphy is going to be has the talent to be a real difference maker here from the defensive tackle position. So just because it's a bit weaker, still 18th overall best player in the NFL, the best D tackle on the board. And the comparison they have here, Bleacher Report, is Grady Jarrett. And obviously, Grady Jarrett is a very high-end defensive tackle in the National Football League. So let's take a look at the positives. Good build with thick lower half and not very much bad weight. Quick get off, helps him get penetration right off the snap. Also has the agility to cross the guard's face when slanting. Shoots his hand straight from his stance and has the upper body strength to get extension against offensive linemen fairly easily. Takes on blocks and with a wide base and a good pad level. Hard to move one-on-one and is solid against double teams. Has shown a nice swim move to escape defeat blocks. He has the strength to pull the guard's shoulder down and win as a pass rusher with arm over and has a nice rip move. Flash decent push-pull and club by move and that he can add to his arsenal in the NFL. Negatives. Lacks the ideal height for NFL D tackle and may have shorter arms. He stops his feet on contact, which can be an issue against double teams from more aggressive offensive linemen, and limits the effectiveness of his bull rush. Subpar use of hands as a pass rusher. Needs to do a better job of working the offensive lineman's hands to start his pass rush moves as he lets them latch onto him. Has a habit of diving at feet when tackling in the backfield, which leads to misses against running backs and athletic QBs. But overall, man, with the biggest need being D tackle, the Bengals, I mean, everything lines up here, and I think they can get a real difference maker here at the defensive tackle position. The guy is a monster. He jumps off the tape. And yeah, Grady Jarrett is a really good comparison here. He's not a real massive D tackle, but he's got great size, and he's just very strong, makes plays. A bit shorter, so just like Grady Jarrett. I think that's why that is the issue. And if you talk about height of a defensive tackle, like you think about being able to bat down passes at the line, and um, you know that or block field goals, like that's the type of stuff like Jalen Carter was doing last year, because Jalen Carter has got the perfect build that everything that a defensive tackle needs to have in the NFL. Um, but that doesn't that's the height is probably the reason why and also why there's been a lot of great offensive players here. Like I'm just seeing him catch a pass for a touchdown. Like that's going to be useful. Like in terms of for trick plays and putting a defensive tackle in there. Obviously, he's got some athleticism. So good pick here from the Cincinnati Bengals. The top defensive tackle comes off the board here at 18 with Byron Murphy going to Cincinnati. And we're here at the 19th pick now, and that is the Los Angeles Rams, who are now up here. And obviously, they just had the retirement announcement of Aaron Donald, so defensive end slash DT is now here as the top position here on the board, and inside linebacker is second. Third is another DT, outside linebacker as the fourth, tackle, safety, corner, flex, guard, center, wide receiver. So most of the needs now for the Rams here on the defensive side of the ball. They actually got a very solid offense, and I think that carried them through to the playoff push. The Rams are a team that I did not expect them to do what I had. I actually had them as one of the worst teams. I think I had them as a 1 win team last year in my predictors. And they definitely the emergence of guys like Puka Nakua, I think, was massive. Stafford having a bounce back year, being able to be healthy for the whole season was massive for the Rams. That also allowed Cooper Kupp, who eventually came back, to be healthy, and he had to put together a solid year as well. The emergence of Kyron Williams as at running back. So they're going to have to mainly be focused here on the defensive side of the ball and replacing Aaron Donald, because let's be honest, Aaron Donald being there made a massive difference, because the rest of the players on that defensive side are not very, very, very good. And so I do have them dipping in as a preview to the defensive tackle, but with Byron Murphy would have been a nice pick here as well to replace AD, but he's come off the board. So I got them going with the best available player, which is with the 19th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Laiatu Latu, edge out of UCLA. Laiatu Latu. This is the type of difference maker that the Rams can really be salivating at, and they know this player well, given that he plays in Los Angeles at UCLA, and he is an absolute beast at the edge rush position. Like I look at Turner, you look at Verse. Latu, for me, is probably just still in that category and has just a high of a ceiling. You want to hear the comparison they have, the Bleacher Report, is to Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's obviously an elite pass rushing talent. I'm just watching him. He's got great rip moves. He's always around the football, making plays. He makes picks. Great size for an NFL edge. Shows impressive twitch and athleticism for someone who's framed. He's got active hands and fluid hips, which allow him to have a handful of pass rush moves, which he can win with a like of hand swipe, arm over, and cross chop. Can turn speed to power, has the quickness to develop an inside stick move, and is flashed with an inside spin move as a counter. Flexible ankles for good bend at the top of the rush. He takes on blocks with his hands and has strength to hold his ground against one-on-one blocks against the run. Good block recognition and agility to help avoid getting reached. The only negatives here is that he had a neck injury while he was at the University of Washington that caused the medical staff to basically kind of retire him. So he kind of left. He was on the scrap heap at Washington, and he was picked up by Pac-12 rivals UCLA, and he's obviously had a resurgence this year, which has rocketed him up. Like the raw ability, and make no mistake, I think that's a player who's going to really work hard for. You can tell he plays with an edge because he feels like he was given up on. Um, but he doesn't have great gap discipline, so he'll leave his assignment early to try to make the play, which opens up cutback lanes. Could be more violent when getting off blocks versus offensive tackles. Occasionally get stuck against stronger competition. Could finish pass rush moves with a stronger rip to get more clean wins. And that's just areas for improvement for him. Um, but Latu, just again another player I wouldn't mind the Eagles getting, but I think it's a great fit here. Get to stay in LA, go to the Rams, and that is the pick at number 19. Latu Latu off the board, going to the Los Angeles Rams. We've now made it to the 20th pick in this year's draft, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are now on the clock. So we're going to go through, obviously, those war room discussions here. So we're looking at the needs here for the Steelers. The top need is at center, corner, tackle, wide receivers. Deontay Johnson was traded. They only really have George Pickens as a decent wide receiver on this roster. Obviously, they've acquired Russell Wilson, so they're going to have to try to get weapons for him some way, shape, or form. Tackle again appears here. Defensive end, being a more of a defensive tackle in Mike Tomlin's defense. Another also defensive tackle, so nose tackle, guard, QB, which I look at Fields and you look at Wilson. I reckon it's disregarded. I did make this list prior to both those acquisitions. Actually, it moved them further because Kenny Pickett had him at a higher need. And safety. They could go center, but I feel like with tackle being on the board, the best player available, and was the 17th best player, now getting picked at number 20, and we'll reveal that to you now. With the 20th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select J.C. Latham, the tackle out of Alabama. Man, that's an absolute steal, and I think that Mike Tomlin, given the needs on his O-line, will absolutely be salivating at the opportunity here to get a prospect like J.C. Latham, one of the last O-line prospects coming out of Nick Saban's system. Man has the ability to be a great. What's the comps here on J.C. Latham? I haven't really done a lot of deep dives into O linemen, as I mentioned earlier, but see Latham scouting report. So J.C. Latham's comp is Anthony Davis. Broad frame with a thick, well-rounded build, long arms and light feet, elite level, commanding play strength and power, very impressive coordination, balance, and agility in his pass sets to stay balanced through the top of the QB's drop. Utilizes active, independent hands in pass protection with a variety of different techniques to keep rushers guessing and off balance. Padlocks for hands to tie up defenders with the power to torque defenders off their feet for thunderous finishes in the run and pass game. Creates immediate vertical movement to pave lanes on double teams, base and down blocks. Brings tone setting, physically imposing ability, and demeanor to the field. So that's back-to-back years. The Pittsburgh Steelers will be going at tackle. So again, he's able to build that O-line of the future. And now if you think about Tomlin's teams at their best, they did have really good strength along the O-line, and I think it's one of the reasons why his teams recently have been like 500 sort of. Obviously, Big Ben went, but it's really like they still have maintained a top elite defense, and so it's the drop off at quarterback plus the drop off at O-line. So they've already addressed QB in free agency and in the trade market by bringing in Russell Wilson and bringing in Justin Fields to compete to play that position for them. So now they're just going to address the O line and they're going to take J.C. Latham here at number 20. So that brings up the Miami Dolphins, who, in my opinion, have got themselves now a great opportunity now. Buffalo, um, given that where they're going now in Josh Allen's contract, have had to let go a lot of key players, including Diggs. Recently, um, they've lost basically a lot of their key guys on this in the secondary. So that's Miami Dolphins' chance, given the fact that they barely missed out on the AFC East title last year, to really take control of this AFC East. And it starts here now at this pick. And so the main needs I've got here is defensive end, guard, center, wide receiver, tackle, cornerback, D tackle, tight end, inside linebacker twice, so 9th and 10th, and guard. So the best player available amongst the needs is the pick that is in here at number 21. With the 21st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Amarius Mims, tackle, Georgia. So now they've got themselves also a run of tackles here going on. Another posing, powerful SEC offensive tackle. The scouting report on him is he looks like he was made in a lab with a towering frame, rocked up build, big hands, and long arms. Easy mover out of his stance and redirecting with the fluidity of someone 25 pounds lighter. Balanced and smooth in his 45-degree and vertical sets to reach his spot on time. Expands his set points and mirror rushes to the top of the QB's drop. Deliver firm, powerful strikes with the grip, strength, and length to keep rushers at his fingertips once latched. Good quickness and fluidity on the move to track, line up, and take out of second-level targets. Gain quick control on down blocks and strains to sustain, steer, and pin defenders to create lanes behind him. So, look, the Miami Dolphins did have needs on here at defensive end, guard, center, ahead, and wide receiver, but there aren't any prospects that are higher than Amarius Mims, who is the fifth. Tackle is the fifth need here on the board for the Miami Dolphins. So they're still taking the best. Again, by my algorithm, this is the best pick for them to take. Here at 21, they get the 19th best player, and that is Amarius Mims. So that is the end of the Miami Dolphins pick. Here we go. Now that brings up pick 22, which obviously is the pick for, wait, where is it? Here we go. For my Philadelphia Eagles. E-A-G-O-E-S, Eagles. So obviously, Eagles, we've made a splash in free agency, I believe. We brought in Saquon Barkley. So we're just going to make just another just massive weapon on the offensive side of the ball. They added Bryce Huff on defense. They brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We brought in Devin White to play linebacker. Brought back Avonte Maddox just recently. Matt Hennessy came in. Zach Bond has come in. So Howe is really kind of like plugged a lot of different positions up so he can be in this position now where he's at the board here and he can take the best player available and he can have some versatility about who they can pick. And I kind of saw with Hassan Reddick being the big trade recently, I did kind of switch my focus because I kind of thought this would be a draft of corners for me. And I think every year something happens where I kind of feel like, oh, the Eagles probably should go corner. I thought it the year they took Jordan Davis. I thought it the year they took Jalen Carter. And it just ends up being that, like, other things get moved up higher to the priority list. And this time the Hassan Reddick gets traded. Obviously, they brought in Bryce Huff. They did draft Nolan Smith last year. But it's kind of for me as like I see Nate Wiggins on the board here, and I also see Chop Robinson on the board here. And I'm not gonna lie, that was where that's kind of where I kind of went back and forth here with the Eagles, and I'll now reveal to you kind of where I was, and it was very close, but at the end, I did choose to go one way, and that is this. With the 22nd pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Chop Robinson, edge out of Penn State. And obviously they're going to bring a boy played here in Philly in his college career. Probably the best pass rusher coming out of Penn State since you know who, Micah Parsons. Just an explosive player coming off the bench, edge, really athletic. He makes a real difference for the Eagles, and I believe, look, he's one of the 4 best pass rushers, and I said I would trade up to get a Verse or to get a Latu, but Chop Robinson, I think Eagles could take here at 22, keep all the draft stock and pick Chop Robinson, who, by all accounts, would be very exciting to stay at home in Philly. They know him well. And in fact, I kind of do believe this will be the guy that the Eagles will take at the end. I think Dan Cilio, shout out to him, said this about a month ago, that the scouts that he's talking about, his buddy he said at Penn State, came up with many praises for they had a lot of praises for Chop Robinson. And yeah, look, I think the Eagles they always build from the trenches, it's important. Brandon Graham is in his last season. They've just lost Hassan Reddick. So if you really could look at the depth chart here, you can go with I didn't really go through the needs for the Eagles, but I just kind of know. You kind of you would see Chop Robinson and Josh Sweat, right? And then you would also have Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff. That's a kind of a nice little mix. They've obviously gone much younger, with Brandon Graham, by the way, still there. So Brandon Graham would probably your 5th. So that's a nice rotation of edge. And if they want to play 4-3, obviously, if you want to play 3-4, you have a lot of different options there. And it's obviously different from Hassan Reddick. He's gone a lot cheaper because he's going to go from a rookie deal. So I'd be excited for Chop Robinson, and obviously I've taken him here at this pick. I could have gone with Wiggins, but I think he's a bit small, and I do think as long as you've got, like, I also kind of thought that bringing back Avonte Maddox for me put me in this way. I think I have the Eagles, and by the way, spoiler, I actually want to tell you. So I do have the Eagles taking TJ Tampa in the 2nd round and taking Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So really addressing the defense here. I've got them going edge, linebacker, and corner, which I think will do them really well. I think you make those 3 picks, which obviously and by the way, I don't like to get other people to pass on players so the Eagles get him. This is just the way it is. And in fact, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was a bit of a reach and a bit of a sentimental signing for me. I just kind of think that one's written in heaven for Trot Jr. to follow the footsteps of Trot Sr. and put on the midnight green. And he would be great next to Devin White and Nakobe Dean in Philly. And there be a real revamp of the linebacker room with that. And TJ Tampa, a 2nd round pick who can learn from Slay and Bradbury, now has the ability to put pressure on Bradbury, because I feel like you could still use Bradbury and let him prove to you that he could still play at this level. And if he doesn't necessarily make it there, you have the ability then to put TJ Tampa in there. And I've obviously got Eli Ricks coming through and Keely Ringo coming through and Isaiah Rogers and Avonte Maddox has come back. Zach McPherson, Darius Slay. So you're going to have a lot of options there at corner. That's why I kind of went with Chop here because I thought they could make a real defensive player at a place where Howie knows how to pick. He knows how to pick on the, in the trenches, and he won't screw up that pick. That's why I've got Chop Robinson going there first, the bread and butter, and then in the second round going where they really need to do a fix on the defense, really taking a corner and taking a linebacker and seeing if they can just kind of fix up their rotation. Because I think the Eagles' defense looks a lot better if you look at it now. So, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, right? And then you would have I reckon they're going 3-4. So you got Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Josh Sweat. And then coming off the edge, you have Chop Robinson, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff rotation. And then you get Trot Jr. or Nakobe Dean playing alongside Devin White, who I think can have a resurgence in Philly. And you have CJ, GJ, Reed Blankenship. I think they could still add at safety, but Reed, they just gave Reed a new contract. And yeah, Darius Slay, and then again, we're just talking about the corners that they have. So I think with these 2 rounds of picks, I think the Eagles have, if Howie goes the way that I've gone, Eagles would be looking a lot better on defense moving forward. Anyway, that's my wrap up of the Eagles pick. They'd go at 22nd, and they take Chop Robinson. Now we've come to pick 23, and the Vikings are now back on the board. Now, obviously, earlier they took J.J. McCarthy and addressed the quarterback position. So now, again, I think we're going to go to a need that's now higher up the board, which now becomes best player available. And I'm not going to run through the needs because I have already, but I will now announce the pick now for the Vikings, and I'll tell you why I went this direction. With the 23rd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Jerzon Newton, defensive tackle out of Illinois. Now, they've got a big gaping hole in the defensive line, I think, for the Vikings. So Jerzon Newton, probably the second best D tackle. I'm going to throw on his tape here quick. Jerzon Newton. Jerzon Newton. So, what do they have to say about Jerzon Newton? Wait, what do they have to say about Jerzon Newton? The scouting report. So, 6'2", 304, so big D tackle. The positives are he's active and quick hands as a pass rusher, works the offensive lineman's hands well to win off the edge. Solid bend for defensive tackle too, so that's impressive. Impressive push-pull move to beat guards as a rusher. Good pass rush motor to get coverage sacks. Strong and physical at the point of attack, and has the upper body strength to gain control off the block. Has natural leverage and is hard to move one-on-one in the running game with his strength. Violent when getting off blocks, and has shown the agility to cross the offensive lineman's face and make tackles in the gap adjacent to his. The comp that I was given here was Sheldon Richardson. So, the Minnesota here, I think they're addressing the defensive line here, and at the 23rd pick, they're going to take, oh man, this guy's a beast. I'm seeing him sling quarterbacks around. That he's going to make a massive difference on the Minnesota Vikings defense. So Jerzon Newton is the 23rd pick for the Minnesota Vikings. So next up on the clock are the Dallas Cowboys. I know I'm wearing this jersey, so you think I'm not going to be impartial and give them someone shit. But that's not fun, and I want to draft the Dallas Cowboys like I am the Dallas Cowboys. So here we go. So their top need is center, followed by tackle. So they lost Biotish and they lost Tyron Smith. So big stalwarts in their defense that are now gone. They've got a need at the flex, at D tackle, at running back. Pollard is gone. Another tackle, wide receiver, defensive end, cornerback, outside linebacker, D tackle. Um, um, okay. All right. The pick is in. With the 24th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Tyler Guyton, the tackle out of Oklahoma. So obviously, with Tyron Smith having left, the Dallas Cowboys definitely need to improve on the O line. Um, I think they've lost some massive guys this year without really replacing them. So this is going to be a big draft for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. You think about it, like I was reading down the list of vacancies that they've left behind, and I feel like there's an element of the Cowboys wanting to kind of refresh the team and try new faces and maybe get younger, which is maybe why they haven't really quite attacked free agency. Um, I think Tyler Guyton can come in here and start from the first year. I don't know if he can replace Tyron Smith because that's not easy, but he's a young tackle with a lot of talent. Um, local because he was at Oklahoma. Um, quick scouting report here on Tyler Guyton. Quick scouting report. Tyler Guyton. Okay. That's the PFF's getting. I want the. There we go. So he's 6'8". That's a 322. That's a big man. Towering and long frame with a lean, evenly dispersed build and very good athletic ability. Packs heat on contact with the size, natural power, and grip strength to engulf the overwhelm the defenders once latched. Naturally strong, anchor to sit and glide down the bull rush. Glides out of his stance in pass protection with the quickness, range, and balance to protect the corner from an island. Flashes patience in his pass sets to maintain the inside-out relationship with light, active, and evasive hands to disrupt the rusher's timing and end reps quickly. Can jolt, feed, and displace first-level defenders on angle drives and double-team blocks with the burst in size to blot out backers on his climbs. So, yeah, Tyler Guyton, I mean, as an Eagles fan, I probably don't want to see them draft a tackle that's dominant, but knowing Jerry Jones, he probably will take the tackle before the center. And they've been linked with Jackson Powers Jr., but I do think Tyler Guyton, being an Oklahoma guy, more suits the Dallas Cowboys. Um, and yeah, I think he's the better player, quite honestly. And after that, I think that's actually you look at his stature, and I do think he does have the frame to be the next long term tackle for the Cowboys and potentially replace Tyron Smith. So, yeah, he goes off the board here at 24 to the Dallas Cowboys. That's Tyler Guyton of Oklahoma. Green Bay Packers are on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers obviously did way overperformed what I thought they would last year. They made it to the NFC divisional round, and really gave the 49ers a run for their money. So they look to build upon that this year, and they've already made some good signings in free agency. They brought in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, most notably. So I look at the Packers. They have 11 picks in this year's draft. So they can almost draft an entire starting lineup. I mean, obviously you can't with seventh rounders and sixth rounders, but so they actually have a complete vacancy on at the defensive end position. Um, they've also changed defensive coordinator, so I have put them into a hybrid for now. So that way, you're just drafting players at all defensive positions. So they have no defensive ends whatsoever. Guys, probably because I've added it as a position and it's empty. Um, they they have so safety is second, linebacker is third, guard is fourth, center is fifth, then defensive end, corner, tight end, defensive tackle, flex, tackle, and corner. So, who's the best player remaining on the board for the Green Bay Packers? Okay, pick is in. With the 25th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson. Now, Nate Wiggins obviously was a player that I was considering with the Eagles at 22. He's actually the 22nd best player ranked on the board, so the Green Bay Packers are getting value from here at 25. So Nate Wiggins has now fallen here to the Green Bay Packers, who need corner. Is on the list. Obviously, they've got Jair Alexander. They lost Rasul Douglas to the Buffalo Bills. So the Packers are light at the cornerback position, but they're going to bring in probably what some people believe is the best corner in this draft. I have him as the third best corner on my board. So I mean, look, for me for Philly, I just kind of thought that he was a bit too small, but he's not necessarily drafted here to Green Bay necessarily to take over and be the number one guy. Because in Philly, Slay and Bradbury are older, and Wiggins would have to be, eventually become the number one guy. In Green Bay, he can become a pairing with Jair Alexander. Nate Wiggins scouting report quickly. So they're saying that Nate Wiggins' combination of coverage, talent, and traits could make him a defensive coordinator's dream. He's tall, long, and fast with a rare recovery speed and when beaten. Silky smooth lower body movement allows him to mirror release and trace routes without much effort. So obviously he is an elite cornerback talent. Played also in the SEC, so he's very well polished at playing against NFL level talent. So he's got great length. He's got long arms, but he's 6'1", which is pretty short for 173. That's pretty small for a cornerback. He would need to probably put on a few pounds to be good. Like, look, if Nate Wiggins was, for instance, the pick of Philly, I wouldn't be against it because obviously we need corner, and he's one of the best corners in this draft. Like, we're not going to... TJ Tampa, who I've taken for the Eagles later on, isn't nearly as good as Nate Wiggins. But for the Green Bay Packers, it's the best position available for their positions of need. So Nate Wiggins is the pick here for Green Bay to solidify that secondary, which would have Wiggins, Jair Alexander, now Xavier McKinney in there. It'd be a bit of a revamp next to Jair, but it would be again, they got 11 picks in this draft, including 2 in the second round. So, yeah. I've actually, in fact, talking about their second round, I did have them taking Edrin Cooper and Adisa Isaac. So they've got a pretty good defensive haul in my mock draft, the Green Bay Packers. And I know people say, oh, yeah, they're doing what to Jordan Love, what they did to Aaron Rodgers, and I disagree with it. Because I think they've drafted a lot of receivers on the offensive side of the ball. They've given Jordan Love Josh Jacobs to play running back. So, yeah, I think defense. I think they need to improve on the defensive side of the football. Most of their needs are on the defensive side of the football, and that's reflected in my mock draft. So, just to recap, Pick 25 to the Green Bay Packers is Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. Now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come out on the clock. They also are coming off of a NFC divisional round loss. Obviously beat my Eagles, embarrassed us, ended Jason Kelsey's career. And their needs are on the interior of the offensive line. Actually, in fact, guard, center, and guard are their first three. Linebacker with Devin White going to Philly. They have defensive tackle, flex, cornerback, back-to-back offensive line, outside linebacker, pass rushing, and tight end. So the best player on the board for their most immediate needs, obviously, is the following player. And the pick is in. With the 26th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. Now, Jackson Powers Johnson is by far and away the best interior lineman in this NFL Draft. I know the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, I've been keeping an eye on him. I've heard it's only some very special things. I actually hear that he's sliding down the board, and he kind of does get picked actually one spot ahead, so not really sliding on the board. He's the 28th best player on mine. He goes 2 spots ahead, actually, toward 26. And with Ryan Jensen's retirement and a massive need in the offensive guard position, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come here in the first round, and they prioritize O-line, which I think they do. They need to. And they get Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Get ourselves here at pick 27, and the Arizona Cardinals are back on the clock for their second pick. Obviously, we said that in the first time they took Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 4. And here they come back up on 27. And as I said last time, they have so many different positions of need on this roster that really they can just go best available. And this is where I went, what direction I went with them. And I think Cardinals fans will be happy with the haul that they would have gotten in this draft. With the 27th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Cooper DeJean, cornerback out of Iowa. Man, this is actually an absolute steal here at pick 27. He's the 24th best player on my board, and just very impressive young cornerback prospect. Obviously, he's famed right now. He's been being spoken about white cornerbacks, white DBs coming back to the NFL, and I mean, I don't have any comment further beyond that, but I'm just saying that's a point of his that's made him famous. Famously talked about in the build-up to this upcoming draft. But that is completely irrelevant, because this kid is such a playmaker. He's just an all-around tough football player. He always makes plays. He's always in and around the ball. He's great against the run, great in coverage. He's a return man. His ability in his return skills. He's just always very physical, tough football player. He could also transition over to safety. But in this Arizona Cardinals system with Buda Baker in place, this guy has been brought in to be the number 1 cornerback on the Cardinals. And I really should think that he has got the talent in the NFL to be a CB1. Yeah, I have him ranked as the 4th best corner in this draft, but all 4 of these guys all have the ability to be the top corner in the draft. Really, I do think a bit that DeJean and Nate Wiggins are slightly below the other 2. So Arnold and Mitchell, I think, are slightly better overall as prospects as cornerbacks, but Cooper DeJean and Nate Wiggins are really not that far off, just slightly below, but they're all going to be really good NFL corners. So the Cardinals get better on both sides of the ball in terms of pass coverage and playmaking in the receiver position. Um, and I think these are two cornerstone players in those positions that will be there for many, many years for the Cardinals. And I do also, as I mentioned before, have the Cardinals in the second round getting Glad McConkey, who is a first round talent as well. He just doesn't make it in the first round due to positions of need on the board. But Arizona Cardinals getting a really nice player here at 27, and that's Cooper DeJean. The Buffalo Bills are here at pick 28, and they're out on the clock. And obviously, they've had a very interesting offseason. I think you could almost say that they've taken a step back, and the ownership and the general manager have said that much, but it was necessary for them to do because of the money that they paid for Josh Allen, and for them also to maybe just kind of get a bit younger while they're still decent, so it doesn't have to be necessarily a full rebuild. But they've lost their main pieces in the secondary, and now, most recently, about a week ago, they traded away Stephon Diggs. So originally, I would not, before that Diggs trade, I would have had, at this point, probably Buffalo going in a separate direction. Actually, they could have also gone in this direction as well. Um, but now it's definitely the utmost importance that they go here. So I'm going to make the selection here for the Buffalo Bills. With the 28th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. So, Stephon Diggs out, and for the second time in Stephon Diggs' NFL career, he has left a team and has been replaced by a stud wide receiver from LSU. So, last time Diggs left Minnesota, he was replaced by Justin Jefferson, and Diggs will leave Buffalo, according to my mock draft, and be replaced by Brian Thomas Jr. Also, just a very impressive wide receiver. Played, of course, opposite to Malik Neighbors and with Jaden Daniels. Just an explosive LSU pairing at wideout. Both of them going in the first round. Well, obviously, there are a lot of comparisons between these two, between when they had Chase and Jefferson together at LSU. Probably the best pairing of wideouts since then. You'll obviously have to see how they translate to the NFL level, like Chase and Jefferson did. But they both have abilities to be real playmakers. But we're here more talking about Brian Thomas Jr., who offers great, rare athleticism at the wide receiver position. And yeah, he's probably down here, and he has slid down the board. I think due to mainly he's also sliding draft stock in general over the past few weeks since the combine because of his bench rep score, and he didn't run the 3-cone or the shuttle drill. So those things kind of did take a hit. But I think honestly, you got to turn on the tape and see just this absolutely remarkable wide receiver. Neighbors obviously is probably the better talent slightly, but Brian Thomas is not far off. And he's going to be just he's going to be in a great situation, I think, with Josh Allen, because now they also Gabe Davis has left the building as well from Buffalo. So he's going to come in and almost essentially be the number one guy. Curtis Samuel, as good as he's been, as solid as he's been as an NFL receiver, is not a number one guy. He's more of a slot guy or a number two guy. Brian Thomas has got the ability, the route running ability, the strength, the hands, the football know-how, the confidence, the body to step in and be an NFL wide receiver one. The way he runs routes very similarly to his teammate Malik Neighbors as well. Um, Again, there's a lot of AJ Brown, I think, to this guy when I watch him play. Just a physically strong. But both of those two guys, like, were absolutely physically strong. You turn on the tape of that LSU offense, and it is absolutely explosive. Again, this is probably, if you think about it, the best offense since Joe Burrow had Chase and Jefferson. Um, and if anything, I actually think it's a slightly bit of a different style because you had better route runners, more, but not as necessarily strong builds in Jefferson and Chase, but also probably more elite talents. And you had Joe Burrow, his obviously one of the best cool QBs in the NFL today. I don't know if necessarily that's going to be Jaden Daniels, but you're going to have to see. And obviously, Jaden Daniels got a different style. But for Buffalo, Josh Allen is going to love this kid. This kid's going to love Josh Allen. He's going to come into the NFL and he's going to have one of the best QBs in the NFL throwing him the ball, and he's the ability to make plays down deep that Josh Allen is going to love. And I think he's going to step in here and replace Stephon Diggs. I think similarly to the way Justin Jefferson did it in Minnesota. But I do think that he's going to step on and have a production from day one here in Buffalo. So I think great selection given the circumstances for the Buffalo Bills, and they don't. It doesn't take long for them to replace Stephon Diggs because here at 28 they do take Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Far away from the end of this mock draft, we're here at pick 29, and the Detroit Lions, after making that magnificent run all the way to the NFC Championship game, coming so close to making it to the Super Bowl, they had the massive lead over which they kind of let slip to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. So after coming so close, the next step, obviously, for the Lions is for them to try to then take that next step, build off of this year, and try to make themselves a team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl next year, and maybe try to win the whole thing. They've got a really good roster that's only going to mature. A lot of their pieces, main pieces, are young. You talk about Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs. So a lot of their main guys are young, and there's such an upside and a longevity, I think, to the roster that Campbell has built. And so so here are the kind of the needs that they have here, which is which is linebacker. I think they need another defensive end opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Corner has been a massive need, I think, for Detroit, even last year. And I think you can tell by the plays that the 49ers are able to make. Brock Purdy step up and make it that second half, where it, comes off of a guy like Kindle Vildor's face mask to fall into Brandon Ayuk's hands and stuff like that. Just it kind of underlines the massive need that they have there. Their offensive line is great, but I do think they need just a little slight upgrade on the interior O line. A wide receiver 3. They've lost a lot of their wide receivers. DJ Chark. No, DJ Chark was out of the building last year. They did lose a few wideouts in this offseason. I think they need some more help at linebacker, corner, safety, with C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back to Philly. So I think the Lions will be very happy with who I've given them here, who I'll reveal now, which is with the 29th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama. One of the coolest names I've ever seen for an NFL draft prospect, or will be for an NFL player. The Kool-Aid Man lands in Detroit. Kool-Aid spelled with a K, not with a C. So what a badass. And look, a year ago, Kool-Aid was ranked as as spoken about as the top cornerback prospect. Obviously, Terrion Arnold's performance this year overshadowed Kool-Aid a little bit. But Kool Aid is still, again, what a deep draft we have here at cornerback. And even this fifth guy, we're talking about how the other four guys could all be step up and be top NFL corners. So could the Kool Aid. Kool Aid, arguably, a year ago, was thought of as the top prospect in this at cornerback in this coming up draft. A lot of people had him think around probably being a top 10 pick, similarly to Patrick Surtain had before, and this kid has got it all. His draft stock has fallen this far as well, consequentially. Again, just similar to Brian Thomas Jr., just due to not testing at the NFL scouting combine. Um, he did choose to run a 40 at his pro day, which was 4.4. Um, and yeah, but a lot of his measurables are still elite, and he's an elite playmaker. And the comp here is AJ Terrell, who obviously has become an elite wide receiver in the NFL, and Kool Aid, I think, could be something. And for the 29th pick for the Detroit Lions to be able to basically um, address the number one need with a guy who a year ago, if they got him, would, you know what I mean? If they so you told the Lions fan a year ago, oh, look, we'll get Kool Aid, we'll make the NFC Championship game and still get Kool Aid. Reminds me a little bit how the Eagles last year went to the Super Bowl and still came out with Jalen Carter, and but a bit of an obvious different scenarios. The Eagles ended up with a top 10 pick, and they're picking at number 9 to get Jalen Carter, where this is now 20 spots afterwards in the next year's draft, and they're going to get an absolute elite playmaker, elite coverage guy in college football in Kool Aid McKinstry. Um, Again, part of that last crop of guys from the Nick Saban era. Because obviously he's a very smart player with great communication in the back end, slides and rides the release to stall, takeover, and timing of the routes. The balance and athleticism to remain in phase with receivers. Does a nice job of reading the receiver's eyes to gain intel. Plays with poise and patience when tracking deep throw targets. Possesses rapid acceleration to close quickly on throws. Well-timed punches, claws and chops, knock away catch attempts. High capable punt returner as well. So similarly to Cooper DeJean, just has got that great elite ability as well and in the return game. Which with the new, I think, return rules, I think some of these guys are going to get a chance to return to actually show what they got at the NFL level um, as a returner. I'm actually watching here on a highlight tape 2 years ago of him making a remarkable open field tackle on Bijan Robinson. Um, and yeah, just the Detroit Lions addressing, I think, what I believe their biggest need was, their biggest hole on this defense in the secondary by bringing in Kool Aid McKinstry. He brings a swagger as well. Similar, like, obviously CJ is a bit of a different cat, but he kind of brings that sort of CJ Gardner Johnson like swagger in that backfield. So huge pick here at 29. The Detroit Lions get their hands on the Kool Aid Man. 30 here, and the Baltimore Ravens are on the clock. And obviously, a disappointing end to their year last year. They, again, just like similar to the Lions, came so close to making it to the Super Bowl. And they just quite didn't make it at the end. The Kansas City Chiefs just edged by them. Obviously, a lot of plays made late by the Chiefs that led to them actually getting over the line. And the Ravens were basically the best team in football for the majority of last year. They were the most consistent side. They ended the year with the best record. And Lamar Jackson had the MVP season. They have bounced back a little bit in free agency by adding a piece like Derrick Henry, hoping that more consistent workhorse type of back could really just take their offense to the next level. So imagine having Lamar Jackson as a threat at running back, and now have to worry about the big refrigerator at RB in Derrick Henry. So sorry, I mean their running game for Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. But they did lose Patrick Queen. That's a notable loss for them. He was the top basic linebacker in free agency this year. He went to their rivals in Pittsburgh. There aren't many holes on this Ravens team. I think similarly to what we're talking about with San Fran, we were in that category. This is a team in that category, but they do have some holes. Definitely on the O line, most notably. At secondary, at corner, at tackle, still on the O line, and inside linebacker with Patrick Queen gone. Um, they need some help on the edge. They lost Jadeveon Clowney. Um, so this is a team though that has ability to have a really strong roster, and then just the flexibility to pick positions at this draft or the best players, but not necessarily maybe positions that the teams that are need a rebuild prioritize, because the Ravens are a contender and will be this year. So I thought my decision for them was straightforward, given the way their offseason has gone, and the pick is now in, and I will announce the pick now for the Baltimore Ravens. With the 30th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Peyton Wilson, the linebacker out of NC State. And here comes the best linebacker off the board. I think him or Edrin Cooper, you could argue, was the best linebacker in this draft. You could say that both of them were late first round to early second round prospects. I do have the Ravens coming here, having the flexibility and the ability to go and get a guy linebacker like this. Losing Patrick Queen, they're going to have a guy like Peyton Wilson slot right in next to Raekwon and Roquan, and he's going to learn from. He's going to be able to have the kind of ability to grow and learn from Roquan, while also having the physical ability to make plays, and kind of just slot into where Patrick Queen left, the hole that Patrick Queen left. He's obviously long and athletic. He was a multi-sport athlete in high school before committing to playing football. He posted a 4.43 second 40-yard dash. He's rangy, and to find his way in a high number of tackle opportunities, and he's got great football intelligence and blocking scheme recognition. Who do they have here as the comp? Zach Cunningham, Eagle player. But Zach Cunningham at his peak in Houston and in Tennessee. That's a great pro comparison here, and that's going to be. And if he plays to that level, and Zach Cunningham even in Philly last year was pretty decent, but he plays at the level of Zach Cunningham at his prime. That'll fit nicely into this Ravens defense, who traditionally is known for having great linebackers. You look obviously Ray Lewis. You look at Roquan, who they just got last year. Patrick Queen. They've always had great players at the linebacker position, and this guy is going to go into a defense that, he's going to have a lot of good people around to learn from. Great player, and the Ravens kind of seamlessly continue to churn out and make quality selections in the first round, and this one is no different. So Peyton Wilson going to the Ravens at pick 30. 2 picks left here in this mock draft, and of course we now have the 2 teams that played in the Super Bowl. They're going to pick here, and we're going to kind of go 1-2 quickly with both of them before wrapping up this video. And as I kind of pointed to earlier, the 49ers are a team that do not have many holes on the team. Probably the best roster overall in the NFL, both on the offense and the defensive side. So there aren't many holes. But one hole that I have criticized them over, obviously prior to being on this channel, but as by talking to my friends or things that I've observed, is they don't have a great offensive line. Obviously they have Trent Williams, who is probably the best left tackle in all of football. But beyond that, I don't think they actually are really good on the O-line. And it's something which is, interestingly enough, if you think about great teams, they're built great on the O line and the D line. The 49ers have gotten away with being great without necessarily having elite players on the offensive line, and I'm gonna change that for them here with a player. I'm not gonna necessarily read off their needs because that's about it. Quite genuinely for the 49ers that they they don't have many needs and it's just on the O line. So I thought the pick here, the only O lineman remaining for me that was as a first round grade. So I will now announce that pick. Who I'm talking about. With the 31st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Graham Barton, offensive guard from Duke. I said offensive guard. He literally placed all over the place. He can play all across the offensive line. He can play at center. He can play at guard. He can play at tackle. It's really going to be about where the 49ers believe in training camp that he can fit in, making his most impact in the first season, because I do believe he's a player who can start right away for them, and he gives them the flexibility to kind of, as I said, O-line is a big need. Outside of Trent Williams, I don't think they have got some really good O-linemen, so you can basically start in any of the other four places along the O-line for the 49ers. And yeah, I think it's an obvious pick. They could take this guy, the talent he has, first round talent, and they can just kind of choose wherever they want to put him along the O-line. And I think it was as straightforward as any pick with the way the board has fallen to the 49ers. Just like the Lions, just you kind of have to go with what's most obviously weak at this point and what's left on the board. And Graham Barton goes to the 49ers here at pick 31. We round off this mock draft with the last pick, and it's the defending world champions once again, the Kansas City Chiefs. And man, they had many. I felt up until a couple weeks ago, when they made the trade that sent L'Jarius Sneed to Tennessee, I thought they really had a great flexibility of where they could go in this draft, and I thought maybe this would be the opportunity for them to build on that wide receiver position, maybe to get themselves a young player. And obviously, the stuff going on with Rashee Rice right now would also kind of lead to them potentially going that way, but they do have picks in the second round, or in the third round, maybe even to go after a corner, not a corner, a wide receiver. Again, just like similarly, we're talking about the last couple picks. We're at the end, so we're at elite teams in the NFL, at least from going off of last season. The Chiefs do have a need on the low line at tackle. They have a massive need now with Snead gone at corner. They could add again as a second running back to Isaiah Pacheco, and in the wide receiver area, I think at DT next to Chris Jones, they could use some help. I think they could use some help at safety. And as I mentioned, they could use some help at wide receiver. And this is kind of the direction I went. And with this pick, we'll close out the end of this mock draft. And here we go. With the 32nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Ennis Rakestraw Jr., cornerback out of Missouri. Now, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., I did not have as a first-round prospect by one pick. So they had him as 33, the 33rd best player in this draft. This is obviously pick 32, but I think that's about similar, like, you know what I mean? Like, just because you've passed the threshold from being a first to a second doesn't necessarily mean he can't be a first rounder. And I think this is obviously where the Chiefs have to go now. This is now the sixth best corner coming off the board. But again, with such a deep class, this guy is probably Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the guy with the best coverage skills amongst um, the corners in this year's draft. So he's one of the best man coverage cornerback prospects in the entire draft. He's nearly all the tools to thrive in that phase. Low cut frame, great length, explosive, energetic short area athleticism, elite fluidity, and transition quickness. And he's a proactive and tenacious, like yeah, and he's just got great physicality for the position. And the kid is just a baller. He makes plays. He's a hard hitter. He'll talk shit to you, when you're on the ground. Just that kind of fierce sort of a tone setter in the back end. And I think he'll fit this Kansas City Chiefs nicely. Snead is out. Snead obviously was a guy who makes a lot of plays, can make punch outs, notably the one in the AFC Championship game. Rakestraw is the type of guy he loves to wreak havoc. He's just he just makes those little plays, and he just finishes off thunderously, I think. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs get great quality here with the 32nd pick here in the first round. And Ennis Rakestraw fills in the Willie Snead Jr. Willie Snead, not Jr. Willie Snead, not Willie Snead, L'Jarius Snead role here for the Chiefs. And yeah, that is the end of my mock drafts in terms of the selections. Off my NFL draft, just a quick recap of the picks. I went number 1, Caleb Williams to the Bears. Commanders going Drake May, number 2. Jaden Daniels at number 3 going to the Patriots. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4th to the Cardinals. Malik Neighbors, 5th to the Chargers. Brock Bowers, 6th to the Giants. Joe Alt at 7 to the Titans. The Falcons getting themselves a defensive player, Dallas Turner at number 8. Roma Dunze going to the Bears to complete a real elite trio of wide receivers. Troy Fatanu going to go play and protect Aaron Rodgers in New York. J.J. McCarthy going to the Vikings without them needing to trade up. Bo Nix then following up, going to the Broncos. Talise Fuaga then starting a run on tackles, going to the Raiders at 13. 14, Ole Fashanu going to the Saints. Quinion Mitchell at 15 to the Colts. Jared Verse at 16. Terrion Arnold at 17 to the Jaguars. Byron Murphy to the Bengals at 18. Latu Latu at 19 to the Rams. J.C. Latham at 20 to the Steelers. Armarius Mims at 21 to the Dolphins. Our boys, the Eagles, getting themselves a Penn State guy, Chop Robinson at 22. Vikings at 23 getting Johnny Newton. Tyler Guyton at 24 going to the Cowboys. Nate Wiggins going to the Packers. Jackson Powers Jr., 26 to the Buccaneers. Cooper DeJean at 27 going to the Cardinals. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bills, replacing Stephon Diggs at 28. 29, the Kool-Aid Man lands in Detroit. At 30, Peyton Wilson replacing Patrick Queen in Baltimore and slotting in next to Roquan Smith. At 31, the 49ers address their needs on the O-line by drafting Graham Barton. And to round it off, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. replacing L'Jarius Snead in Kansas City at pick 32. Thank you for sticking in with me here. If you've made it this far through this draft, it's been a lot of fun. I'm hoping to make more content like this in the future. This is kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to make a channel like this. But please, I really ask of you, can you please, if you're watching this video, don't just watch. Can you please hit the like button? If you really enjoy the content, we're going to be rolling out a lot of stuff, so you're going to want to subscribe to this channel. Obviously, it's going to help me with my YouTube algorithm, so then I can build on this channel. So every single like, every single subscription, every single view at this point is really, really helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for checking in, and we'll see you later soon. Peace. Action here. I had Jaden Daniels going second to the Commanders, and Drake May going third to the Patriots. So actually, I got that wrong in my review. So I'm just going to add this here on to the end here, so you guys, I correct myself.